Good evening and welcome to the May 22nd, 2025 meeting of the Brookline School Committee. It's a very special evening here. We are honoring, I'm not going to say farewell, we're honoring and thanking Helen Charlepski for her 33 years of service to this district. We have people at home maybe can't see this, but the room is packed and everybody's standing room only for Helen. So this is really impressive. We have a ton of folks who wanted to speak. We're going to get through everybody, but just when you're speaking, keep in mind Helen loves all of you, but she has dinner reservations at 6:45 or their family are up. First up is Dr. Guillory.
Good evening. To our honoree Helen and assembled guests, tonight we celebrate a remarkable woman whose dedication to education has shaped the very fabric of our school district. For 33 years, Helen Charlepski served on this committee with deliberate commitment, unbounded energy, and a deep love and appreciation for our students, staff, and community. Helen championed the foundation of it all, early education. She understood that a child's earliest experience in the classroom shapes a lifetime of learning, and she worked relentlessly to ensure that our youngest learners had every opportunity to thrive. This year, we have full-day experiences for our early childhood, also known as BEEP students. Helen also brought a unique and passionate focus to a less common but just as vital area, swimming. Whether it was advocating for swim lessons as a life skill, ensuring access to pool facilities, or simply celebrating our student athletes, she made sure aquatics had a place in our educational conversation. Her true desired state, swimming as a graduation requirement from BHS. We haven't made that one as of yet. And when it came to capital improvements and building projects, Helen brought vision. She believed that the spaces where children learn should inspire them, and thanks to her insight, we have seen schools modernized, learning environments transformed, and entire campuses reimagined. I would encourage the Brookline School Committee to strongly consider permanently memorializing Helen's love for Brookline schools by naming a venue in her honor. Tonight, we do not just celebrate the years, it's the legacy that matters. Helen, your fingerprints are on every school, practically and maybe literally every classroom, and every child whose path was made a little brighter because of your work. On behalf of the entire district, thank you. We are better because of you.
Next up is State Representative Tommy Vitullo.
I suppose I should speak into the mic because we're on television. I am Tommy Vitullo, and I moved to Brookline in 2003. I became involved in town politics 2006, 2007. Was sworn in the legislature in 2019, which is to say, I can't say very much about Helen Charlepski because I'm new here. But I will say this. This is like a teacher speaking to a classroom who's paying attention. Raise your hand if the following two things are true. You're on the school committee and you have Helen Charlepski's cell phone number. Raise your hand. I fully expect each of you to call her at least once a month about something, because I guarantee you whatever that thing is that's new for you is not new for her, and I'm sure she will have some wisdom to impart. I hope that you will avail yourself of it. So what I would like to do now is read a citation that my colleagues and I put together. Be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Helen Charlupski in recognition of her 33 years of service and commitment to the town of Brookline and Brookline schools, and finally having a few evenings free during the week. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors, given this 22nd day of May, 2025, merely an hour before a delicious dinner.
So Senator Cindy Cream really wanted to be here, but they are debating the budget in the Senate right now. But Samantha O'Reilly from her office is here.
It's the biggest wah-wah of all time when I come up in place of Cindy Cream. Senator Cream is currently on the rostrum presiding over the third day of Senate budget debates. She sends her deepest regrets, but I'm very honored to take her place. I'm a resident of Brookline, and walking by the town hall every day, I finally thought I'd step inside and see what it's all about. I'm here to present a few remarks Senator Cream had prepared ahead of this evening. I do not resemble her at all, but maybe if we squint, I can get away with it here. She wrote, "It's an honor to recognize Helen and her remarkable 33 years of service to the Brookline community. I've had the privilege of knowing Helen for many years, and I've always admired her extraordinary work ethic, intelligence, and thoughtful approach to public service. I've truly enjoyed working with her over the years and have tremendous respect for her dedication to students, families, and educators in our community. As she begins this next chapter, I want to thank her for all she's contributed and wish her continued success in the meaningful endeavors that lie ahead." And similarly to the representative, I'd love to present an official citation from the Massachusetts State Senate. Be it known that the Massachusetts Senate hereby extends its congratulations to Helen Charlupski in recognition of your many contributions to the public schools of Brookline while serving 33 years on the Brookline School Committee. Signed by the Senate President, the Clerk of the Senate, and Majority Leader Cindy Cream. Congratulations.
Okay, now we're going to enter into what is known as former school committee member Hunger Games. So I'm just going to list folks out, and this is including but not limited to, and then you can all fight out who goes first. Rebecca Stone, Abby Cox, Judy Myers, Kevin Lang, Nancy Heller, Susan Wolf-Ditkoff, David Perlman, and anybody I missed. Oh, David Pollock, Barbara Scotto, Jen Monopoly. So anybody I didn't call, you can get up in line if you want to speak. Did I not say Kevin? And
Hi, everyone.
Nancy Heller, right?
Yeah, I'm Susan Wolf-Ditkoff. I use she pronouns. This is my first time back in this room since I retired from the school committee, and the first time I'm watching or attending a school committee meeting since I retired. So I just want you to get a sense of magnitude of how much of your life you will get back. When I was asked to speak, the first thing I did is try to think about Helen in terms of buckets, and put her characteristics into buckets. But Helen's a gem. She defies all buckets. For the G, she is generous of spirit. She's a social worker at heart, not only by occupation, but by personality. She wants to know, and she does know everything about you. And She knows the names of the custodians' parents who she once sat on a committee with 13 years ago and can tell you what room that committee met in. But she just makes connections naturally. It's just pours out of her for anyone who's known her. And that is why everyone, raise your hand if you are not on the school committee and you have Helen's cell phone number. Yeah, so that's like everyone in this room, right? Including people who left, Brookline 15 years ago. For E, she is energetic. I have bad news for current school committee members. Helen probably did so many things that you will never know about until they fall through the cracks because she was self-effacing about it and so energetic in the time and the hours and the mornings and the evenings and the weekends that she put into this district is just extraordinary. And finally, she has it for M, for the gem. She has a mind like a steel trap. If you ask her the price of the terrazzo flooring on a particular floor in a building that she wasn't even on the building committee of 30 years ago, she will tell you. And then she will compare that to the lifetime cost of PVC, vinyl, something, I don't know. And she will do the math for you all in her head. We used to make fun of a former deputy superintendent who did budgeting on PowerPoint, but Helen does budgeting in her head and carries so much institutional memory that she has forgotten more than all of you, with respect, know and may ever know. And that does include you, Dr. Bob, I'm sorry. So, Helen, the schools are going to miss you, and I'm just excited because I'm gonna get to spend some time with you.
I know that's yours. Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca Stone. This is not my first time back here since I retired from school committee, but it's coming close. Anyway, what a joy to be here. I am a town meeting member, and in the current environment, it is really nice to be here, especially with the school committee, to thank and celebrate the work of a school committee member over so many years. So first, because Helen deserves all of the accolades you're going to get, and because you have those 6:45 dinner reservations, which will matter a lot more to Judy Myers than it does to you. So first, personally, so Helen, you were the first person who asked me to run for school committee. I don't know whether you remember that, and since we were coming off a really disastrous Lawrence School renovation, you want to talk about a disaster, start with the Lawrence renovation. Happy to tell that story anytime. Somehow we became friends, even though you were on the school committee and I was not, and we were not happy. But that was really wonderful because it began a wonderful part of my life. So thank you for that. Thank you also for all of the Yiddish you've taught me over the years. Oh my goodness, I thought I knew some. I grew up in New York City, but no. But Helen is the source. So you also, the school committee, it's important for you to know Yiddish. So call her for that. Thank you for teaching me so much about the political infrastructure of public schools and also the backstories on almost everybody in Brookline. It's important to know those. I think Susan was sort of alluding to this. It's important to know the backstories on the person you're talking to in Brookline because they are, without your knowing it, either married to or deeply involved with someone who you're not necessarily fond of. And you don't want to be talking about them. So call Helen about that and just ask her before you meet with somebody for the first time. So even more than what you did for me, what you brought to all of us personally is what you've done for the schools. And everybody is going to have their thing that you've done for the schools. But the first time you and I met for coffee after I was on the committee, I asked you what you were proudest of, and you said full day kindergarten. So I don't know whether any of it, raise your hand if you remember kindergarten that ended at noon. Right, so my daughter, Katie, who is now a public defender in Albuquerque, New Mexico, was the first kindergarten class in Brookline to have full-day kindergarten. And we owe that largely to one Helen Charlupsky. The other thing I remember from being on school committee after that happened is that full-day kindergarten was funded through grants from the state for the first many years it existed. And when when those grants ended, we had to figure out a way to put that money into our budget. And there was some question about whether or not we were going to be able to afford to continue full-day kindergarten, to which we had all become accustomed. And again, Helen Charlepsky was the reason we managed to do that. And she got the school committee together. She got the entire town in back of it. So thank you for full-day kindergarten. And thank you for all of the other things that you've done that have to do with early childhood education, which I will not go into because other people need to speak. But thank you for everything.
To hold? Yes, you do. Yeah, I figure it out, but I can't see either. Oh, wow. Okay. Anyway, just coming back here tonight, I was thinking, oh, what do I have to do? Okay, I can't see anymore. I have new eyes, so I can't see close. Anyway, how does one capture 33 years on the school committee in 3 minutes, if I even have 3 minutes, or even just my 12 years on the school committee with Helen? I can't do it. It's not working? Okay, thank you. Not too close. Oh, I can't do it, so I won't even try. So when I think of Helen's time on, I like to move around. It's okay. All right. When I think of Helen's time on the school committee, 2 things come to mind: early childhood and capital projects. Yeah, those capital projects like all 9 schools. So early childhood, that made sense to me as I thought back, because before the Brookline schools, Helen was a talented social worker. It made sense. She was working with children's. I think she was at Children's Hospital. So early childhood was a natural fit. And Helen's involvement in developing BEEP and her advocacy, her passionate advocacy for all the early childhood initiatives, both in Brookline and statewide, they're legendary. But how did Helen, and this is where I got stuck, how did Helen become the expert, the school committee expert on school renovations? So much so that at least in my 12 years, none of us had to focus on it, and we were free to focus on other things. And then it came to me, the Runkle Library. Way back, not the Runkle Library you know today, but the dumpy Runkle Library from over 3 decades ago, before Runkle was renovated, that really needed a makeover. That's when I first got to know Helen. We were on the Runkle Library Renovation Committee together. I am, to this day, do not remember what I did on the Runkle Library Committee, why I was on it, but I do remember Helen. In retrospect, it was a comparatively small project, at least compared to entire school renovations. But Helen was all over it, from the plans, the layout, the design, the furniture, and even down to the colors. Every detail. And what's more, I learned then that Helen does like bargains. So most of us want to get good value, for what we pay. But the time and energy that Helen puts in to get the absolute best price on every aspect of the project is another legendary thing about her. Well, the rest is history. Helen has had her hands on all 9 buildings, or at least it will be once Pierce gets finished and they're not going to let you go. And wow, what a job she's done. So finally, just on a personal note, I just want to add that Helen was chair of the school committee when I joined in 2000. She was a most wonderful mentor and so generous with her time. She taught me what it was to be a good school committee member. Learn from your colleagues. Really listen to what they have to say. Even when you disagree, you can benefit from understanding their point of view. Then vote your conscience. Most important, they are your colleagues, so be collegial. So, to Itai and Daniela and Ari, we all thank you so much for sharing your mom with us for all these years.
So I'm Kevin Lang, served for 13 years with Helen. I think we just demonstrated what a cooperative school committee we were, even holding the mic for each other. I've been told to limit myself to 3 minutes, and I'm going to try to keep to that. But those of you who served with me know I won't succeed. My first memory of cooperating and collaborating with Helen was Nancy Heller signed me to a committee to deal with replacement windows somewhere. I don't do windows. But I learned very quickly. I just sat next to Helen and said, do I raise my hand? And if she said yes, it went up. And if she said no, it didn't go up. And that was very much, I think the way we worked was we tried to learn each other's expertise, and I learned a great deal about building projects, renovations, and all that from Helen. I also learned a great deal about early childhood education from her. And I'm going to, I think, end to keep within my more or less 3 minutes with just one event, which is, Helen was really terrific about getting the renovations. And she announced to the school committee that we had actually, on one occasion for one of the projects she'd been involved in, that we had won an architectural prize for the windows we had replaced. I was rather appalled that we'd won a prize for the ones that were replaced, but she did assure me that I'd misunderstood, and it was the windows that she had brought to the school. So I could go on and on. You were one of the early chairs. You tolerated some of my behavior, corrected some of it as well. I learned a lot, and I was so happy you were still there when I came off to know that the school committee was in good hands. So thank you so much, Helen.
Hello, everyone. David Perlman, now on the Select Board. I was on school committee as recently as a year ago, and I'm someone who never uses up to 3 minutes, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, for me, a special number with Helen is the number 18. So when I was an 18-year-old, I graduated from Brookline High School, and it was Helen who handed me my diploma. Little did I know that 18 years after that moment, that I have my diploma signed by Helen, I would join her as a colleague. Now, when I first joined school committee, I was just 36 years old. It was my first foray into townwide politics. I didn't completely know what I was doing. Barbara Scotto was my official mentor and really helped me out quite a bit. And Helen did as well. And Helen would privately take me aside and say, David, this is really how it's done, but I appreciate that you're trying. And those moments were very helpful, and she never once would publicly embarrass me. It was always done in private, and I was very appreciative of that. Now, others have touched upon Helen's successes in building projects and with early education, but something that hasn't been brought up yet is that Helen is the human LinkedIn. It's really incredible how many people she knows all over the place, how she's able to network. Whenever a vacancy would open up, I would maybe talk to Helen about it, and she would say, there's this assistant deputy superintendent in Pittsfield who would be really perfect for this position. I'm going to reach out and see if they want to apply. And so I'm not sure we ever really needed professional headhunters. You seem to know everybody, and I'm sure that we have not heard the last from you, nor should we. So you will still be very much involved. 33 years is a very long time, but it's going to keep going. So thank you for all that you've done.
Hi, I'm Nancy Heller, former member of the school committee from 1989 to 2001. I was on the school committee when Helen ran, and we didn't really know each other very well, but it was in 1992, my second term and her first, and since that time we've been dear friends. And I want to thank her for becoming my friend, because she is a wonderful friend, and she has got great insight into everything. It's amazing. She also, as other people have said, she does have a mind like a steel trap. She remembers so much. So you can call her and ask her, oh, do you remember this or that or the other thing? And she always comes up with the answer. But I won't take too much time because I see that you're running into your dinner reservations here. But I just want to mention her extraordinary ability on the capital projects. And one of the things, someone said, how did she know so much? And the reason she knew so much is that she applied herself. She went to all of the meetings, even though she wasn't the chair or wasn't on the project. She would go to the meetings to get informed and be informed. And I was the school committee liaison to the first BHS renovation, which was in, we had the, we had, see what I mean? I'm chair and I was funneling for the date. We had the override in 1995 and got going in 97 and finished in 99. But Helen came to those meetings, and she always had good information. She always was informed about stuff. And again, when I was the chair of the BHS, co-chair with Susan Wolf-Ditkoff on the BHS project, the recent one, Helen was involved. And she was involved in all aspects. And that's how she knows so much. She's an encyclopedia of school committee and school department capital projects. So I hope you will remember that in the future. I think for that, and also her kindergarten advocacy. And that's how she knows so many people across the state, because she went to the meetings at the State House. She went to the meetings at the Department of Ed. She was very, very involved, very, very involved in a way that I think most of us can really admire. So I want to thank her. I want to also thank her. I feel like she's going to be a lifelong friend, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you, Helen.
Next up, we have, David Pollock. Okay.
I just want to fill in another blank and really talk to the school committee as well, because Nancy just sort of led into this, but what I didn't really hear was all of Helen's service for the schools in outreach. So we used to be part of something called EDCO, and maybe that's in our future. I've heard rumors about an educational collaborative. I can do that. And she was our representative to EDCO. Beacon Hill, I can do that. DESE, everybody was like, don't look at me, like, like this. Who's gonna be the liaison to DESE? Ellen was like, I can do that. And all of those governmental external relations really pay off, and they're really important. And so, as Susan said, watch out for things falling through the cracks. Chair's going to have to figure out how to fill in those blanks.
Next, we have Chair of the Select Board, Bernard Green.
I wrote out my remarks. Betsy Fitzpatrick said, say a few words, and I wrote a few words, and then I realized I wrote too many words, too many things to say. So I cut them back, including while sitting here in the auditorium. So I'm here to add to the...
Take off time from work?
Okay. Good evening. I'm here to add to the many accolades being bestowed upon Helen Charlevsky as she steps down from her long tenure as a member of the Brookline School Committee. I'm Bernard Green, chair of the Brookline School Select. There's a reason why I made that mistake. You'll learn in a little while. chair of the Brookline Select Board. And like Tommy, I came here in 2003, so I'm a youngster in terms of Brookline time. Helen has served on the school committee since May of 1992, as you know, and during that time, I know she cared about the schools, the children, and the town, as well as staff and everyone else that had a connection to the schools. She has chaired and been a member of many of the school committee subcommittees and various school building committees, including co-chairing with me and Janet Fierman, the Pierce School Building Committee. And she's been a valuable member of that committee. That long period of service has given her knowledge, as other people have indicated, of the operations of the schools and the important issues that people with less experience may miss. It also created a record that people can take pot shots at, unfortunately, or cast blame on her for the many, many things over that 33-year period that were outside her or Brookline's control, and all to her political disadvantage many times. Many years ago, I served on a school board in one of the eastern suburbs of Cleveland. Service on a governing body of a school district is no easy task, and many people get burned out after a few years. But Helen has persisted for 33 years. We should thank her for that long period of service. We should also reflect on that service and try to capture some of the things that she knew and did, which may help us going forward. Helen has been an invaluable and irreplaceable font of knowledge about the education issues that go into the building of a school. She is also able, and I think this is unusual and very important, able to discuss school issues almost as a peer with our team of designers, construction contractors, and the owner's project manager. That ability has been crucial in anticipating and avoiding little problems before they become big, big issues. And partially as a result of that work by Helen, and this is the news, we are anticipating that the Pierce School will be completed on budget, or under budget, I'm sorry, under budget, yeah, on time and under budget by a significant amount. We will be losing a valuable member of the school committee, but we should all thank Helen for persisting over those 33 long, difficult, but impactful years. I anticipate and hope that she will continue working on behalf of Brookline and the schools and the children of the schools for 33 more years. I don't mean to put that on you, but that's what we want. Anyway, thank you, Helen, and you know, we really appreciate everything that you've done.
I'm not sure if all three of the next speakers are speaking, but we have Dr. Asa Sebelius, Anthony Meyer, and Hal Mason on behalf of PSB school leaders.
Well, it's an honor to be here tonight, but I'm a little underprepared. I was told this was a roast, and so I've come with some pretty crude jokes. Okay, no, I'm joking. I will say that listening to all the other speeches, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to talk about building projects. Check. She was an usher, captain, and a guide. Those were my 3 words. I wrote usher, captain, and guide in those projects. Touchstone and historian. Everybody's talking about how she is a touchstone and a historian, both so valuable, invaluable in our current climate, and any climate, frankly. Helen, you've seen a long trajectory, the long arc of American education, something that we all prize, we value, we're concerned about, is precious to us. And you've ushered us as a captain and as a guide through 33 years of tremendous change in America. And I am grateful for that. We all are. I speak on behalf of all the B through K-8 principals. We're all in support of you and have cherished your partnership. I think the thing that when we were talking about what we wanted to say kind of collectively tonight, the principals really wanted to say this. We really have loved how much you've believed in us and you've trusted us. You saw the goodness in children, in schools, and you worked tirelessly for the good and what is inherent in our system, and you trusted us, the school principals, with that task, and for that, we are deeply appreciative. In a time where there's so much messaging about what needs to be done in schools, Facebook discussions, tweets, angry letters, joyful letters, so much messaging, you really were the person who could kind of cut through the fat, see the good, hold the line, make connections, stay curious, be in conversation, and lean into those long-standing relationships with us. Even if they were a year old, they felt long-standing, and you trusted us, and that was really special and very appreciated and won't be forgotten. So thank you, Helen, for everything.
Thank you, Asa. My name is Anthony Meyer. It's my pleasure to be the head of school and my greater pleasure to say a few very short words about Helen Charlepsky. I've been in Brookline. This is my 21st year, and so to imagine 33 years and all that I don't know, it's good for me, and more importantly, good for this school community. I would just say you have a fierce intellect. You have boundless empathy. And unwavering grace, and how critical that is now more than ever. I can't say enough, and I really appreciate what Asa said on behalf of K-8 principals and on behalf of Margaret at BEEP. I would just say the high school joins in those comments, and we also oddly thought we needed a special moment with just Brookline High School, which I'm sure is shocking. But more importantly, just thank you for your visits to my office. If you know Helen, there are this incredible exchange of pleasantries and laughing and smiling, and then she would say, "So," and then I would hear the two questions or the two issues, and it was always so respectful and collegial, and we will miss the heck out of you. And so thank you so much for your friendship and your incredible service to this district and for being the person you are. So thank you.
I've cut my remarks, the high school gets 2 moments actually, 2 moments. I've cut my remark down to 1 sentence. It's a little bit long, but it's 1 sentence. Dr. Gilliver, I appreciate what you brought up, the idea that at some point we'll all get together in another venue and celebrate and put Helen's name somewhere in Brookline, and certainly that will be a joyous and wonderful day. But I don't think we need to. I don't think it's necessary. I think if you go to any of the schools around Brookline, if you go to any of the rooms around Brookline, if you walk through the halls of Brookline High School or any of the K-8s, you'll find Helen's heart is already there. And it's something that really makes the schools what they are. Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Karen Schmuckler on behalf of the school staff. I'm sorry, I missed Dr. Lupini.
And this is the first time I've been back in this room in 10 years. I am honored to have served Brookline as superintendent for 11 years. I worked with many really incredibly talented school committee members during that time. And I'm sorry for mentioning people. I know I'll leave some names out, but people like Marcia Heist, like Kevin Lang, Henry Warren, Rebecca Stone, Alan Morris, Ruth Kaplan, and many, many other really amazing partners in the work that we did in this district. And constant during all that time, from my hiring in 2004 through my departure in 2015, was Helen Charlepsky. Speakers have already noted Helen's many accomplishments and attributes, but I want to focus on 3 areas that I believe she's made a difference for Brookline and Massachusetts, other than the amazing work with buildings. So first, her advocacy in early education. I'm certain that Vicki Milstein would explain this much more eloquently than I can, But the worlds of early childhood and elementary secondary don't always play well together in the sandbox. Helen was a significant driving force in making certain that we found a way and that young children and families were always included in our vision of what an outstanding public school system could be. Even in times of growth. We had this amazing idea when I first came here that we were going to make sure there was pre-K in every building, pre-K through 8, right? And then came the enrollment growth and we began moving out. And Helen was the driving force in working with Peter Rowe and Vicki Milstein and others to make sure that we found locations. And boy, did we find some amazing locations during that time to make sure we could continue to offer quality programming. Second, her work in the legislative, regulation, and policy matters were incredible. Whether the issue was funding, special education, MCAS, or work with the MSBA, Helen was always there, always well-informed, and was always an active voice. Finally, her work on collaboratives, as David mentioned, and in particular EDCO, was stellar. She was one of the 2 to 3 most active board members at EDCO, where she advocated for quality professional learning for educators and programming for students with IEPs and their needs beyond the public school district capacity. In addition, she became a trusted advisor to my very good friend Cindy Tamor when Cindy was brought in to close EDCO. She has said to me many times and wanted me to make sure that I mentioned tonight what an asset you were, Helen, and what a great advisor to her during that very difficult time. Helen, you've served the students, families, and educators of this district for many years. Sadly, I don't think that we will see many tenures like Helen's in the future, given the current state of school committees and public education in the Commonwealth and nation. But on behalf of those who worked with you for many years, thank you for your outstanding work, your dedication to the cause, and your advocacy on the part of public education. Thanks, Helen.
Good evening, and hi, Helen. I am first going to read remarks from Vicki, who could not be here. So, to Helen from Vicki. I am so sorry. So, Vicki Milstein, as you may have heard, if you don't already know, was the principal and director of BEEP for many, many years and worked very closely with Helen, and you'll hear a little bit about their journey together. I'm so sorry not to be here in person. A bar and bat mitzvah trip with grandchildren is really the only thing that could have kept me away. This is to you, Helen, a masterful, professional, compassionate, and stellar representative on the school committee for the public schools of Brookline. When I came to the school system to lead BEEP, you were my mentor and guide in learning everything I needed to know to navigate the unique qualities of Brookline. No small task. You were my liaison to the school committee for all the years I worked here. You supported the expansion of BEEP from 12 to 23 classrooms, always keeping your eye on available townwide spaces, also no small task. We sat together to write the transition to full-day kindergarten grant and the implementation grant. You supported our adapting to take all the Brookline children in Head Start when Head Start closed the Brookline program in August one year. You were part of our early childhood site council. In short, you were our champion. But you also went beyond early childhood, making your mark on every building project, supporting families of the most vulnerable students, and supporting the most innovative new programming to maximize the achievement of all students. You listened to families and teachers. You knew every administrator, and you worked hard to help every one of us achieve our goals. You kept the vision of Superintendent Bob Sperber alive through extended day options for families and, of course, early education. You have meant the world to early education in Brookline and set the stage for our many visitors from around the globe. You have been my most heartfelt support. You have been a gift to Brookline, and your legacy will surely shine on for years to come. I wish you only joyful new journeys going forward. With love and respect, Vicky. Okay. Aren't they pretty? Okay. All right, so for over 3 decades, Helen, you have been a steady, compassionate force, leading not with ego or agenda, but with heart, humility, and an unwavering commitment to the well-being of every student. Your work has touched every corner of our district, from early childhood education to every school building project, and your voice has been a powerful one at the State House, where you have advocated tirelessly on behalf of public education and the needs of our community. You brought to every conversation a combination of warmth, fairness, and fierce dedication. At this time of current turmoil, Helen, you singularly asked me incisive questions. You asked for data. You wanted to get to the bottom of what happened, to the truth, to facts, not to score political points or for personal gain, but because you care so deeply about the public schools of Brookline and its reputation. You wanted, as you have always, to make things right, to make things better for the system, for faculty, for families, for students. And that is what you've always done. Put the well-being of the students of Brookline first. Your work was often quiet and behind the scenes. Many people do not know or appreciate the breadth and depth of what you did, your vast institutional knowledge and deep relationships that have benefited the school system in significant and profound ways. You have always shown care and respect for principles and leadership, understanding and respecting the challenges and complexity of the day-to-day work, and always working to support it. The community and school district definitely needs change. Change in the direction of all the things you embody: kindness, care, civility, grace, respect. Qualities that unfortunately are sorely lacking in our current discourse, and qualities that we need infused across our systems. Helen, your legacy is everywhere. On behalf of the Central Office leadership, our educators, students, families, and the many who have been fortunate to work alongside you, thank you. Thank you for your vision, your steadfastness, your compassion, and your 33 years of extraordinary service. So, on behalf of the school district, this says, in honor of Helen Charlupski, with deep appreciation for your 33 years, with deep appreciation for your 33 years of tireless dedication and unwavering commitment to the public schools of Brookline.
Thank you. Would any current school committee member like to say a few words? Jesse?
Hi, good evening. I guess historically it'll be written that I was the last school committee member, perhaps officially, that was a mentee of Helen. Helen was my mentor my first year last year on school committee. And the word that I want to associate with the feelings that I have about her right now is the word blessing, which in Hebrew we know is bracha. And one of the meanings or essences of to be blessed is to receive something that places you in a state of well-being. And what Helen blessed me with this year was to help me navigate becoming a new school committee member. And when we met, whether it was here or other locations, including her graciousness to invite me to her home to sit and talk, it helped me navigate my year, and it blessed me. It put me in a place of more well-being. And so I want to return the blessing that as you continue on to impact your lovely family, your friends, and all the people in the voluminous list of people that you know everywhere, that you receive from them well-being and that you continue to bless them with well-being. Congratulations on all of your years of service. We deeply appreciate it.
Suzanne?
Thank you. I think I might cry. So it's been 9 years, Helen. I feel like I have a new friend. You've taught us so much, which battles to pick, which ones not, how to be gracious if you're on a losing side, and how to keep fighting. And so we've learned so much. Everybody has said wonderful things, and I agree with all of them. I also just want to say I really wish you, it's kind of a retirement, right? And I wish you time with your family. I've been watching your family grow just as mine has been growing. I'm hoping we have time for walks around the reservoir. We keep talking about it. We've been so busy, we haven't gotten there. And I hope we will. I hope you have time for your gardens. Your gardening is beautiful. I love what you've done around your house. And so I wish you blessings, as you said, Jesse, and grace going forward, knowing that we are right here, and I know that you are right there, and that we will have time to spend together. And also rest assured that your name is on every building. So that we just go look at the plaque, and there's Helen's name. So thank you for all your service, Helen, and thanks for being a friend.
Kieran, you're next.
Hi, Helen. I'll just preface this by saying, Helen, you've been serving on the school committee longer than I've been alive, so my comments might be more, brief relative to everyone else, but I will just talk about how you made me feel, being here for the last year. Whenever I delivered a report, you were always the first person to speak, to respond. You always had something to say. You always had a compliment to give. And coming from somebody who was very nervous to speak in front of a group of such illustrious adults, that really, really did help me, gave me the confidence to speak. And I mean, my dad, I can tell you, he watches every single meeting. He would always tell me, he's like, I think Helen knows more about being a VHS student than you do after 4 years. And after a year in, I can say that is probably true. And so, I do just want to thank you so much. I really do hope our paths cross again. And I feel, truly, like Jesse said, blessed and privileged to have, spent a year with you on the school committee.
Sarah. Thank you. I want to go back to your training as a social worker. And I think that it also couples with being a parent. I think that there's two things that came together for you of a real understanding of children and developmental levels of children, what's appropriate at different ages. And that sort of love for the child, the student, the adolescent, that's what comes through. That's what I always look for in a school leader. And that's what it really comes through with you, is that you understand what it takes to have a true student experience that's going to put them in the situation for prime for learning. So thank you for that for our schools.
Mariah. Helen. So everyone raised their hand when we said, oh, who has Helen's cell phone? And Suzanne just pointed out that Helen's name is already in every building. But I want to know if anyone else can raise their hand, who has Helen's picture hanging on their parents' dining room wall? Just me. Because Helen handed me, like David back in the day, my diploma from Brookline High School. And after I joined school committee, I was at my parents' house having dinner, and I squinted and looked at the wall, and I said, is that Helen? But, so Helen has marked my education and my time in Brookline from well before we knew each other personally, and being on school committee with Helen for the past 6 years has been an absolute joy and privilege. working so closely with her on so many different things. And, you know, this past year has been very challenging for me and my family. I've had some health issues and I've gone through that. And Helen has been this just tremendous supporter. And everyone said, and it's true, you know, we would call and talk about school committee business, but there would not be a call that didn't go by with her saying, but how are you? Right? It was never all about business. I tend to be very business. She's thinking about the people and she is caring about how they are. And that's just like you in a nutshell is, you know, people talk about the buildings, but it's really the things inside the buildings that Helen has been caring about. So thank you. And I look forward to us spending a lot more time together.
I'm trying to remember, as we're hearing from all these people, the first time that I met Helen, and I can't remember. I think the first time I met you, then your name is on the plaque in the Baker School hallway, and I think it says 2001. Maybe it was the library. And I remember being like, 2001, but that's like really long ago. So how is she like on the school committee now? And then I remember stuffing envelopes in your home for the school that was not. And then I remember sitting outside my yoga studio crying, and you were listening to me. I don't remember why, but I was afraid my daughter wasn't going to get into SWS, and I don't remember why. I must have done something obnoxious and thought that it was going to jeopardize her chances. And then here we've been. So I'm just thinking all those things. And then I ran into you at the reservoir last week with my daughter home from college. And it's just, you know, you are an inspiration, and it's really inspiring as a still new school committee member to hear from all of these people about your work and your true heart and commitment and legacy, and just amazing. So thank you.
Andy Liu online.
Hi, Helen. Well, this is not goodbye for sure, but I just wanted to say, Jesse talked about mentorship. You have been my mentor for all 5 years that I've been on the school committee. Never officially, but you are the one whose cell phone I call when I need some advice, when I need some perspective, when I need to rant, which is often over the past year. And you know, you always listen, you have wisdom, and you always calm me down. So this is not the end. Congratulations on getting your life back, but we'll keep working.
Bob?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Helen. So I'm actually convinced that you served for 36 years. And the reason I'm convinced that you actually served for 36 years, even though that's probably not true, when I came to Brookline High in 1989, I remember working with you in the cafeteria, trying to civilize the Brookline High School cafeteria, which certainly Anthony and Hal are continuing to do. But I remember that we were busy. We said, let's make the cafeteria sort of elegant, right? Oh, that was when you were PTO. And we put white tablecloths on all, and we had a little flower vase on each table, and we put fresh flowers on. Do you remember that, Mary? No. You weren't there.
That was gone.
No, it was
not that old.
No, it was not, right. So anyway, and that failed because we forgot that the inhabitants of the cafeteria were teenagers and uncivilized. Anyway, that's why I thought it was 36 years. So I want to say a couple quick things because we've known each other a long time. Again, when I came to Brookline High School, the entrance was on the left side of the old building, and it was two skinny doors. You know, if you had luggage or something, you could barely get in. And I was upset because I said people would come through these doors, that was the entrance, and they'd go, this is Brookline High School? Yeah, the Roberts House entrance, and they would say that. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. Nancy, I have to mention you as well, for the renovation in 1997, whatever it was, because I was so proud to have that atrium entrance, and people would come in to the high school and say, Brookline High School. And I said, okay, that's what we wanted. So thank you for that. And then, of course, you can fill us in, but I know you and Nancy found these Elgin marbles at the Lincoln School. Who found those marbles? I mean, impressive, because those are like one of 3 copies of the original Elgin marbles, which were stolen, and they're in the British Museum right now. But you guys found somebody to clean those Elgin marbles up, and we had this perfect frame on the top of the atrium, and now the Elgin marbles grace the atrium of Brookline High School. And so that, to me, is one of your, outstanding contributions to the architecture of our school system. You're an amazing woman, Helen. I love you. Thank you for all of your work, and we'll see each other for sure, because I'm going to be calling you regularly, as you well know. Thank you.
Oh, no, it's not you yet, Helen. Sorry. First, I had to laugh at what Suzanne said about retirement, because a week ago, Helen, 8 days ago, Val, you're late for the solar meeting. Get on the solar meeting. So Helen's not going away. She's not going away from Brookline. She's not going away from building projects, and certainly not from any of our lives. Helen, I'm going to read something, but I want to thank you for the friendship, most of all, and the mentorship. Okay. Whereas Helen Charlepski was first elected to the Brookline School Committee in May 1992 and served the public schools of Brookline for 11 consecutive terms for a total of 33 years, and whereas Ms. Charlepski's 3 children graduated from Runkle School, who are here, in Brookline High School, providing her with a firsthand perspective on the achievements, strengths, and needs of our school community. And whereas Helen faithfully served on the capital improvements, curriculum, government relations subcommittees, served as chair and vice chair of the school committee, and led 5 major successful school renovation projects. And whereas Helen was instrumental in bringing full-day kindergarten to Brookline, served as a member of the Early Childhood Advisory Council of the Massachusetts Department of Education for a decade, and was a stalwart supporter of early childhood education throughout her tenure. Whereas Helen used her education and training as a social worker to create a lasting partnership between the school district and the Brookline Community Mental Health Center, and whereas Helen was a founding member of the Brookline High School Innovation Fund, was the Massachusetts Association of School Committees representative to the Department of Early Education and Care since its inception in 2005, and was the chair of EDCO, the Education Collaborative. Now, therefore, on behalf of the staff, parents, and students, past and present and future, of the public schools of Brookline, the school committee and the superintendent of schools gratefully acknowledge Helen's incalculable contributions to the public schools of Brookline and extend their deep gratitude to her 33 years of exemplary public service. I bring you the woman, the myth, the legend, Helen Charlepski.
Wow. I feel like my life just passed in front of me. This has been amazing. With everybody who's here, who's meant so much to me. I can't thank you all enough. Thank you to Betsy, and the school committee, and everybody who's been involved in organizing this event. I'm going to cry pretty soon. I don't want to. I want to thank my children, Itai, Daniela, oh, there you are, and Ari, for their support throughout all these years. I also want to thank my late husband, Joseph Peterman, who was always there for me throughout the 33 years on the committee. I'm sure he's smiling watching this program. I had spoken to Senator Cream earlier, and she had said she wasn't going to be able to come, and she's a good friend and will continue to be. And I thank Tommy Vitolo for his State House proclamation. It has been my honor to serve on this Brookline School Committee for 33 years. I began in 1992, a rookie who didn't say a word for almost the first year. I listened closely and learned. There was a lot to learn. 1, how to read and understand a budget. 2, how to build a building that prioritizes function over form. 3, what curriculum scope and sequence means and how important it is in educating children. Robert's Rules of Order, an important piece to learn as school committee members. How to identify high quality early education in a classroom and understand its importance to overall educational outcomes, and many more lessons. I learned from my great school committee colleagues over the years, many of whom who are here tonight and spoke earlier. I also learned from great administrators like Jim Walsh, who's right here, Peter Rowe, Claire Jackson, and Jennifer Fisher-Mueller, and many others who are also here tonight. And I'm trying to keep it short, guys. The work of the school committee has become immensely harder over the last 15 years. In the past, constituents had to pick up a phone and call you. With the advent of the internet and platforms like Facebook, online spaces have often turned into echo chambers, lacking genuine dialogue. Here are some lessons that I've learned over the years. 1, you can disagree, but don't be disagreeable. 2, try and come to consensus. It's important in moving systems forward. 3, patience is important. Education moves at a snail's pace. People are not widgets and need to be brought along. Real, enduring change takes time and patience. 4, in the end, all the hard work is worth it because you've been able to affect students, staff, and families' lives for the better. I've received many texts, emails, phone calls, and handwritten cards thanking me for my years of service and how much they appreciated my work. The messages have all moved me deeply. It's wonderful to hear how people feel about you when you're still alive. It's true. You know? I decided to read one email tonight because it reminded me that you never know how you affect people. This is from a former student representative to the school committee. Hi, Helen. I was the student representative to the Brookline School Committee back in 2006 to 8. He was there for 2 years and had the incredible pleasure of working with you for those 2 years. You were a shining example of how to navigate complex and differing opinions to get to consensus. One of the things that really stood out to me was how many school committee decisions were unanimous, barring abstentions due to conflict of interest. I started paying attention to how those decisions happened and noticed there were a few key people, of which you were one, pushing in the right ways to get to agreement. The lessons of my time on the school committee have been hugely valuable to me throughout my career. After college, I co-founded a software consulting company that I've run for almost 12 years. The company now employs 30 people, and those techniques of building consensus behind decisions are an essential piece of how we do it. The management culture of my company is very much about finding that decision that everyone can get behind. I want to thank you all for coming out on this awful rainy night. Your presence here has truly means a lot to me, and I know our relationships will all continue for a long time. Thank you to everybody. Thank you for the gifts, the flowers, and the words of kindness. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Enjoy dinner.
We'll pause for a minute and then get back to business.
Sure, no one else is going on dinner right now. That's true. Yeah, we'll help you. Give it back. Thank you.
How many times have we had that conversation?
I don't want to keep you any longer.
Thank you.
Of course, no, even for just 1 year. Thank you so
I'm
much.
sure. I'm going to hear about you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
I know.
What was the landscape prior to these warrant articles? How do your corporations and how will it withstand legal scrutiny? So keep it fairly macro level. And John's going to help me in terms of crafting. Okay. Because I agree with you, simple and higher level is probably better. There's also a lot of town meeting members, some have very short attention spans and are sort of just passively involved. And if you go too long into detail, no, I think that the short version of the motion is, it's not really substantively different. It's not substantively different, except that there is a notice to the audience. And they get to come in and say something, but ultimately, it's not, ultimately, she asserts in her government memo that it gives the board control. And it just doesn't. Over, it's like clearly over. Don't have any kind of veto power, which I think should be. Great, okay, well, anyway, calling me, calling Mark, we need this.
Literally, like, the second we got it. So they have a baccalaureate ceremony. Saying that us. And then, yes, I know. Actually, when I started, there were like, she was like just so much. I don't know what her name is. I guess I don't want to say yeah, she has a daughter. She had another daughter. One of them, right? Friends. But there are. Yeah, yeah.
All right. We're going to get started in just a minute. So a couple of announcements as we get started. We have 8 school committee members in the room and Andy Liu on Zoom. On administrative business, we are going to move 2A1 to the June 12th meeting. Mariah, do you want to take us through the approval of gifts, starting with the PSB policy on gifts and grants?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Betsy, do you mind pulling up the slides that I presented yesterday? And you all have these in your packet, but for anyone who wasn't at finance yesterday, because we've had a lot of questions and conversation about some of the gifts and grants ahead of us, I thought it would be helpful if we did a review. And so if you were at finance yesterday, you already heard this discussion, but we'll just do it quickly for people who weren't there and for those online. So there's a section of the PSB policy, fiscal management, and part of that deals with gifts and grants, and I've extracted some of the key bits of that policy for our shared review. So the first section that is particularly relevant is section D5, which is on pages 5 through 6 of section D. Do you mind making it just a smidge? I mean, I have it, I guess, so it'll be okay. People online can see that too. Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Betsy. So just to read this, the school committee encourages grant funding proposals and applications for any projects that supplement school programs in useful and beneficial ways. To this end, 1, the administration shall make appropriate surveys in order to be eligible for state and federal monies, meaning I presume they shall look for opportunities. And then 2, prior to filing applications, the administration shall inform the school committee members via memorandum explaining the purpose of the proposal and its relationship to existing or contemplated school programs, which Susan this year has enacted now, where we have prior approval, which is wonderful to achieve that second item that had not been part of practice before, or at least not recent practice. Then going to the next slide, use of revenues from non-tax sources, so individual donations, grants, private and PTO fundraising. So public education is primarily the responsibility of the public, and therefore the operating and capital budgets for PSB should reflect the will of the public to finance the schools through public revenues, i.e. tax sources. The school committee welcomes additional revenues from non-tax sources as gifts to the PSB to advance the priorities and educational goals established by the school committee, provided such gifts are in accordance with state and federal law, existing local bylaws, and this policy, and provided the gift and or its effects reflect the PSB core value of educational equity. And then as another subsection of D7, which is on the next page there, there's a specific section on grants and gifts from private sources. And I'm just going to go through this because the 4 Roman numerals you see there are essentially a rubric by which you can evaluate the acceptance of these gifts. So in order to allocate supplemental funds equitably and in response to changing needs, the school committee prefers grants and gifts from private sources to be unrestricted. In the event that a private source, should say wishes, this throws me off, wishes to restrict the use of funds, the school committee's approval of the restricted use must be secured prior to a vote to accept the gift, and such approval shall be subject to a determination by the committee in consultation with the superintendent that the following conditions are met. 1, the gift is directed or restricted to a use consistent with an established priority of the school committee as expressed in, for example, the strategic plan, recommendations from a program review, the annual budget, and or the capital improvements plan. 2, the gift supplements the use of public funds already committed to the intended program or project, or for which public funds are not yet sufficient or available. 3, the purpose and effect of the gift will not encumber substantial future public school funds for ongoing costs, including but not limited to support or maintenance, unless such spending is already planned for in the operating budget or anticipated in future budget years. 4, the effect of the gift will not create a permanent condition at or for an individual elementary school or its facility that creates a substantially inequitable overall experience for students at that school relative to those at other PSB elementary schools. So I appreciate Val taking the time just to let us go through that so everyone's operating from the same basis of understanding on the policy.
Thank you for doing that, Mariah.
Sure.
I listened to the recording yesterday. I appreciate you going through it today. Yes, Jesse.
I was somewhat surprised to see the first item in the approval of gifts quickly disappear from our discussions tonight. I just want to say that I'm not sure when we knew that this was not going to be in and when we were notified not to consider it for this evening. But I just want to make the statement that the agenda is publicized a day or two before our meeting. And there can be a lot of work that is done by any individual school committee members to prepare, to discuss, to meet with people, to discuss with constituents around the town, et cetera. And that work that gets put in to be sort of quickly dispensed with and to be moved out without any warning other than the time we come to the meeting seems a little surprising for any item in there. I'm not picking on this item. I'm just raising the issue that it's not really seems appropriate for us to come to the meeting with an agenda and then have items disappear all of a sudden to be talked about at a different time. And if so, perhaps maybe at least a reason could be given for why, so that we understand the movement.
Sure, I can tell you why. I asked Anthony.
Sorry, I don't know what we're talking about here.
2A1 is deferred until June 12th.
Where is that?
It's the first gift.
I know, but how do I know it's deferred?
I announced it 10 minutes ago. The head of school of Brookline High School is going to be here on June 12th so that he can answer our questions about this. This was my decision, Jesse, because we seem to have a lot of questions coming in, and so I wanted us to discuss this at a date when the head of school is available to answer questions on this gift.
We also discussed it yesterday at Finance, which was another opportunity for the head of school or anybody who is or isn't a part of the Finance Committee.
Finance was at 2 p.m. yesterday. This is a regular school committee that's being broadcast, and we'll consider it on June 12th.
Also, he couldn't be there yesterday either, so.
Now, my question is not that we've moved it. It already happened. My point is only that once we knew, it would have been appropriate to inform the members of the school committee once we knew it, so that it's not dropped on us at the actual meeting.
I talked to Anthony about it a half hour ago or an hour ago at Helen's event, so apologies for not sooner, but I discussed this with Anthony when he was here in the room.
Thank you.
So he's available on the 12th to come and meet with us. So 2A2.
Sorry, I have to follow up because
the point of this, Carolyn, was so that we would move on and get back to it with time on June 12th. It isn't to debate it tonight.
I'm just asking for clarity about the reason. Sorry, because I missed the announcement.
There seem to be a lot of questions in the community and among members, and I would like our head of school, where the gift would be going, to be able to answer questions about how that money would be used.
Got it.
So 2A2 is a BCF gift for $2,500, the Lauren Dunn Astley Fund for BEEP financial assistance. Do you want to go through all of them? That'd be
I'll just say that at Finance yesterday, the Finance Subcommittee recommended unanimously 2A2, 2A4, 2A5, and 2A6. So maybe we could take those in a block and then come back. And I will move that.
I'll second that. Any discussion on that?
Everything except this one.
So everything except 2A3?
Yeah.
Any discussion? Okay, Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Donna? Yes. Carolyn?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, next is 2A3. On this one, I would like to ask that we go around, if everybody wants to speak on this, that we go around once with a 3-minute cap, and then we can come back to people if they have further comments or questions. Mariah, do you want to introduce this one?
Sure. Are you going to take the request for conflicts?
Oh, my apologies. Are there any folks who want to disclose conflicts or appearance of conflict on this item? Mariah? Suzanne, and then Sarah.
I will disclose that I donated to the fundraiser for this. We previously consulted with town council, and according to their guidance, have filed an appropriate perceived conflict of interest with our appointing authority, or I have done that with my appointing authority, who's Ben Kaufman. And further, I just want to clarify, per the latest guidance from town council, that even if the gift is not used for this purpose, I would direct it to be used for other purposes, and that allows me to vote on this tonight.
Thank you. Suzanne?
Ditto that, except in this case, it was my spouse, but both our names are on the check. So in case there's any concern of conflict, I filled out the form with Ben this afternoon, and I too, my husband and I will donate the money. We will not accept return of that if this were to be defeated.
Thank you, Suzanne. Sarah?
I'm in the same situation. I filled out the form to Ben Kaufman, and should this grant not be accepted, I am not intending to take the money back.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there a motion on this item?
Sorry, can I just ask a clarifying question? These are donations to the Brookline Community Foundation? To us. No, that you're all, like, I don't know, can you just explain what just happened? Sorry.
Yeah, so I'll take that. So the Brookline Community Fund, when they saw that we had eliminated from the budget the Office of Educational Equity, they started to gather money so that this could continue, and now they're going to give it to us as a gift. When they were asking for donations, I donated.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so finance considered this as well tomorrow, and there was discussion, and I will not try to recap it, nor will I claim that we discussed it to the exhaustion of all members, because we were on a relatively tight time frame. But the final vote was 2 in favor and 1 against to recommend adoption or acceptance by the full school committee.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this?
I'll move it if you want, or you want to?
No, I'm happy to second your motion.
Okay, Suzanne moves and Mariah seconds. And you're moving acceptance of the finance recommendation. Any discussion? Jesse?
The grant placed before us this evening challenges us, I think, in 2 primary ways. First, given the recent audit results, the school committee, all of us here, needs to focus on sending the clearest message that can be sent to the school district and larger community that we have our eyes laser focused on managing the existing budget as we proceed. As we enter a challenging year of teacher union negotiations, we know budget pressures will undoubtedly appear. We realize that changes in funding at the federal and state levels, ranging from school food programs to education grants, create financial uncertainty. Thus, the proposed grant from the Brookline Community Foundation, a grant-making organization specifically supporting various staff positions and limited to a single school year, cannot be really understood as a once-and-done action. The contributors expect that the district will budget these staff positions going forward. Thus, any school committee member voting to accept the gift acknowledges that we should expect to see the funding in this gift entering the school budget for fiscal year 27. This approach immediately contributes to our structural deficit and is both fiscally imprudent and financially unsound. And It sends the wrong message to the greater Brookline community. Second, the Expenditures and Revenue Study Committee has begun its work by analyzing the existing relationship between the finances of the town and the schools. We are currently investigating whether there are better ways to model the town-school relationship to be more cost-efficient while maximizing the effectiveness of every dollar. And of course, we are looking at other avenues to increase revenue. Nevertheless, it is likely that we will recommend, meaning the Expenditures and Revenue Study Committee, will recommend that an override question be placed on the May 2026 ballot. Our school committee needs to think very carefully about the narrative that we are writing this evening. If we accept a nearly $200,000 grant to fund a specific program, the taxpayers, when faced with an override question, can and will probably say, quote, "Why should I vote to give the school budget the money they are asking for when community members who want specific programs can simply raise their own funds privately?" This is not a stretch. If we vote to accept this grant, we are telling the community that if you want a program that doesn't exist, just raise the funds on your own and grant the dollars to the district. This is a very dangerous precedent to set. Each of us needs to ask ourselves some basic questions. Am I voting for my town or for myself? Am I voting for a special interest group or for the entire school community? Am I voting to tell our broader community that private funding for public school educational programs is our new model? Let's show the community that together, as a unified school committee, we are committed to making financial decisions with firm and foundational footings. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mariah, and then Bob.
Thank you. So I think that I don't want to get too much into what you just said, Jesse, because everyone has their own opinions, and that's wonderful. The only thing I just want to comment on is this idea of, you said something like contributors expect that this will be added. And as a contributor, I don't know how you would know what was in my mind or in any of the other contributors' minds. I just want to be clear that like there's assumptions made in that comment, in those comments that are not necessarily accurate or fair. I think that one of the things that I have struggled with, of many, about our vote several months ago, is the idea that there is not even the opportunity to figure out how to do something better. We got this great story earlier about the end of the grant for early childhood education and how that possibly could have been the end for full-day kindergarten here in Brookline, and how Helen stewarded this plan to think about how we could make this work and how we could make it fit, and how that got there. Right? And part of what that needed was some time. Now, people might disagree with the concept of the office, and that's a different question. But when we voted earlier this year, it was the question of the budget. What I would like to do is to give the office, or at least one of the staff members in the office, that office may no longer exist, but give us the runway, I think that was the word that was used yesterday, and I think it's the right one, the runway, to see what we have space for, what changes we might make, how to ensure that some of the things that were started that we find most valuable continue, how to ensure that we aren't just cutting educational equity, which, yes, I agree, exists in many different programs, but this was the strategic district-wide vision for it, how we get that to continue. So from my perspective, there are 4 elements in the policy that were noticed earlier, and I think the one that opponents of it right now are latching onto is this idea that it's somehow going into the budget long-term. It may not, but we really cannot be cutting off this program, especially, as I mentioned during our vote 2 months ago or whenever that was, at this time in our country when we're seeing active efforts to dismantle equity and dismantle this idea of value in these programs. I don't think that that's not the kind of district I want to be a part of, and I'm quite committed to seeing how we can do this better. Now, does this give us 1 year to figure that out? That'd be great. That's all this is 1 year. I agree with you. We have there's so much road in front of us relating to finances and what we can afford. And honestly, this OEE money is probably is the rounding error on what we actually have to consider here. This is not a lot of money in the overall thing. There's bigger changes, and OEE is not the issue here. But is equity important? Do we need to figure out how to make equity, how to make special education, all of this programming fit within our means? We do. And I see this grant as giving us some more time to think about that, staff to think about that, and to continue some of this work. So I am voting favorably, and that's all I'm going to say about it for now.
Thank you. Bob?
Thank you very much. Here's a story. In 2003, Ramon Gonzalez took over one of the most dangerous and low-achieving schools in New York City and founded a new school, IS, Intermediate School 223, the Laboratory School of Finance and Technology. It's located in the South Bronx in the most impoverished congressional district in the nation. Over the next 22 years, Ramon, working with his faculty and community, transformed this school into one of the highest performing schools in the city. This is how he did it. Extended days with academic tutoring, counseling, and recreation. Accelerated learning in the summer with time for the arts and recreation. 3, moving from an intermediate school, grades 6 through 8, to a grade 6 through 12 school because he didn't want to lose his middle school students after they made tremendous academic progress. 4, creating a robust academic culture in the school where every student was required to take at least one AP course to graduate. And 5, engaging local colleges and social justice organizations to serve as tutors, social workers, and coaches. This is what Ramon said. For us, providing these essential extra services is a way to accelerate their preparation for high school and college. I just left the school to head to a meeting. It's 5:10 in the afternoon, and the school is full of kids, and the school day ended at 2:30 p.m. This is about equity in our schools. Here are the data. 100% of intermediate school, high school 223 students attend post-secondary education, most with full scholarships. ISHS 223 established what I call a powerful academic center of gravity. Brookline's calculus project, founded by Dr. Adrian Mims in 2009, is a cousin to Ramon's work at ISHS 223. 1, accelerated learning in the summer. 2, enrollment in high-powered math courses at the high school. 3, after-school tutoring throughout the academic year. 4, a pride curriculum connecting students with engineers, scientists, and mathematicians of color. And 5, regular celebrations of academic success with students and parents. Like ISHS 223, it's about a laser focus on the program's academic center of gravity. I'll never forget the reunion we had at Brookline High School in June 2018 with the first cohort of the calculus project. All 21 students graduated from college in 4 years, about half in STEM disciplines. That is stunning. The graduates spoke about being in high-powered math classes with their peers. They spoke about the support they received from their teachers. They spoke about how their teachers loved them. The eternal problem we're talking about is the historical gap between the academic performance of white and Asian students and black and brown students. The OEE staff most certainly wants the same results that all of us want, but their model has not and will not produce those results. The 2 examples that I gave and I described continue to produce the results that we all want. A school is about the academic success of every student. A student's job is learning. Success at their job translates into social and emotional well-being. Student success is facilitated by a laser focus on a school's academic center of gravity. If I had $200,000, I would begin the calculus project in 4th grade, and I would consider a power literacy program modeled after the calculus project. Thank you very much for listening.
Sarah?
We have work that we've started in Brookline. We haven't let it continue along to get the results from it. And that work has been, it's all through our strategic plan. It's work that we've set up with these goals in mind for our historically underserved population. And I think that to not continue for this next year would be throwing away our return on investment for what we've done already. We've gotten together and we've talked about what we all value, and we value equity in Brookline, and keeping this program, or keeping one assistant director from this program to further the work with the equity leads, I think is what we should keep on doing.
Anyone else? Okay, the motion on the floor is to support the recommendation vote of yes at the Finance Committee. Jesse, how do you vote?
With a full commitment to providing equitable access to educational opportunities for all students in the district, I will vote no.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes?
Mariah?
Yes.
Donna?
No.
Carolyn?
No.
Bob?
No.
Andy?
I vote no, which goes against my personal feelings about the valuable work that the office has been doing, but I don't feel able to vote yes, consistent with our own policy.
And I also vote no. Right. Approval of grants. Yes, please.
Finance Subcommittee also considered these yesterday and recommended unanimously acceptance by the full school committee.
I move that we accept 2B1 and 2B2. Mariah seconds. Any discussion on this? Okay, I'll start at that end. Bob, your vote?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes, excuse me.
Sorry, Donna?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes?
Suzanne?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Next up, we have the superintendent's report.
Good evening. Superintendent's update for tonight. The PSB Food Service Pledge anniversary. This month marks 1 year since PSB signed the Forward Food Pledge, a pledge to make 50% of all menu items served in the National School Lunch Program plant-based by 2027. In 1 year, the PSB has achieved 86% towards this target goal. On Tuesday, May 20th, PSB Food Services held a community event at BHS at the Tappan Cafeteria, where we celebrated our progress and discussed how PSB is on the path to creating one of the most sustainable school lunch programs. Community members had the opportunity to sample some of the amazing plant-based recipes that are served to students daily. And earlier in the year, I had the opportunity to go over to one of their featured days and tried their kelp meatballs, or kelp balls is what they were called. So that was a new adventure for me. Pretty tasty as well, I must say. I'll put that plug out. So here's a photo shared of the tasting event with the food service staff, as well as several of our school committee members attended as well. Orienteering at PSB. PSB has been working with the Navigation Games, a nonprofit focused on outdoor education, to incorporate orienteering into our physical education curriculum. Over the past year, we have introduced orienteering at each of our K-8 schools. Orienteering is an outdoor activity where participants navigate a course using a map and a compass. Besides physical fitness and agility, it also helps develop critical thinking and problem-solving skills. And here are a few images of students engaging in that process. Reading a map is becoming one of those dying arts, so I'm pleased to see that our students are engaging in this.
Did they and the photographer get home?
I believe so. I hadn't had any missing student reports.
We're looking for them.
Cardio drumming at FRR. Students at the FRR school took part in a cardio drumming session earlier this week. Cardio drumming is a full body workout that that combines rhythmic drumming and with aerobic movements. It helps boost our cardiovascular health, coordination, and gross motor skills among children. And here are a few, here's an image of that at the FRR school. And then last but not least, Driscoll, our Art Equinox. I want to shout out to Olivia Rayalt and Ann Reed for their work together. This is the year of the turtle at Driscoll, and so these are clay models of turtles that both staff and students participated in making. Bless you. And so this display is still, this is still on display for probably another 2 weeks or so. And so you can get the image here of a mother sea turtle with all the little ones following behind her on the great passage there. So, and with that, one other.
Is the big turtle David Euclid? Is that the idea?
I'm not going that far. He was here.
Right, we didn't see this the other night? We didn't know that this was there? I would have wanted to see it.
Upstairs.
I guess it might have been upstairs, yeah.
On the second floor. And the last, speaking of celebrating Helen, and I know several other district employees participated in the Pierce Prints, which is a book club where students pick and choose a book to read and then discuss it. So I had the opportunity to join in that event this year, and Helen was there as well, and several other district employees. So with that, that concludes our superintendent's report for tonight.
Thank you very much. That brings us to public comment. We have, oh, I'm sorry, of course, Mariah.
I just want to give a tremendous shout out to the food services team. The food at that event was spectacular. And the kelp balls, which I say suffer from a marketing problem, the name just does not do justice to their deliciousness because they were actually very good. They were like falafel is the way I was describing them, right? Kind of like a falafel. Anyway.
And in the presentation, they made nacho cheese out of carrots and potatoes.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
It was so good. Yeah. Anyway, so huge, tremendous shout out for the second week in a row to our amazing food services team. And just congratulations.
Anybody else? Okay, so that brings us to public comment, which today we have two segments of. We have the first segment that will be at this portion of the meeting, and then the second segment is at the conclusion of our regular business. So members of the public may provide public comment either in person or remotely. If you'd like to provide public comment, you can always email school_committee by 12 p.m. on the Thursday of our meeting. We're going to call folks up in the order that they were signed up. All speakers are limited to 3 minutes a person. The public comment period, as I said, the first segment is 15 minutes, and then if we require more than that, which we will today, we'll have that at the end of our meeting. First up, we have Linda Monach and Faith, together. So are you both speaking, or are you using 6 minutes? Okay, great.
Do you want to hold the microphone for me?
No, I think you're okay. I think you can manage it.
Okay, we're going to cover a lot in 6 minutes. I'm going to send it to you afterwards because there's a lot of detail here that goes directly toward the audit report. So Faith and I are here tonight as members of the Special Education Parents Advisory Council, or CPAC. We appreciate the work of Clifton Larson Allen LLP, and we're encouraged to see that while there are budget challenges, none of them involve missing or misused money. The findings confirmed that the budget process has been fraught with tension, error, confusion, lack of collaboration, and misunderstandings. What we find frustrating about the report is the lack of answers as to why things happened and a general lack of consideration for student impacts. First, we want to point to highlight a key point in Section 3. In Section 3A, it states that PSB can expect an 8% salary increase on general fund. Our property tax base, the primary source of these funds, is limited to a maximum of 2.5% increase each year. Quote, without a decrease in the FTE count or lessening the operating funds burden to pay for the salaries, the salary contract increases and increased special education costs are not sustainable short-term or long-term unless additional funding sources are identified, end quote. Based on Susan Given's presentation to school committee on March 5th, the salary structural deficit, say that 10 times fast, will be $2.1 million, 25 versus 26. This cannot be solved without either reducing FTEs, negotiating drastically new contract terms, or finding new and sustainable sources of funding. We start behind by $2 million for salaries alone. This will happen every year, and it will grow every year. Now to our why questions. Section 2 states that there was no evidence that OSS provided detailed budget estimates. Why? Was their input not requested, or was the deputy superintendent of OSS excluded from the process? Section 4 states that revolving funds haven't been appropriately tapped to fund the budget. Why? Was this a choice by Linus and Susan, or do they not understand how revolving funds work? And is school committee policy the answer, or is this an issue of training and expertise? Section 5 and 6 talk about contracts not signed by OAF and important forms like Corey forms not being in place for vendors and staff. Why? Why didn't OAF sign the contracts? Why weren't Corey forms in place? The auditors in their solution want better processes and consequences if work starts without forms and contracts in place, but fail to discuss consequences if personnel delay the paperwork beyond the without delay in the law. If OAF doesn't sign contracts until November, which happened this year, should all students be denied all contracted IEP services until November? How many lawsuits will that involve? And what will be the effect for our students who don't receive services during that time? In Section 7, this is less about why than concern that the auditors were not familiar enough with special education law. The auditors quote federal law that, quote, services need to be implemented as soon as possible after the IEP, end quote. Mass law states that services need to be implemented, quote, without delay. It is a higher standard. In a quick search this morning on the DESE database, Faith found 6 cases that reinforce the state's commitment to getting services to students without delay. Quoting one representative summary, quote, the case emphasizes the necessity for districts to act without delay upon parental acceptance of the IEP. Putting that aside, slowing down services to students seems out of step with the vision for public schools of Brookline. What we need is a way to address the procedural challenges addressed in Section 7 while providing services without delay to students. Section 8 discusses OOD placements and settlements in a frankly confusing way that blurs the line between the two. They are different, and in fact, not all settlements include out-of-district placements. Settlements happen when IEP teams can't come to agreement on placement and/or services. In Section 8A, the auditors state, quote, due to the additional costs associated with providing OOD services to students, the IEP team carefully considers all other options available before approving such services. However, parents often do not agree with the determinations of the IEP team and will demand that certain services be provided beyond what is recommended by the IEP team, end quote. This statement demonstrates a complete lack of understanding of the IEP process and laws. It reads as if the IEP team is comprised only of PSB staff. The IEP team, by law, includes parents. IEP teams always look at in-district programs first because districts are mandated to try to keep students in the least restrictive environment, not because of price. OOD services can sometimes be less expensive than creating entirely new specialized programs for a small number of students. The idea that parents often disagree is not grounded in any actual analysis of data relating to legal action that we can identify. Many settlements involve parents sharing the cost of services or placement for their child. Districts use settlements to avoid the high costs of litigation and to share costs of services. Decision-making during settlement discussions is a balance of the needs of the student, ability of PSB to meet those needs, chances of PSB winning at hearing, and opportunity to get parents to share in the cost. We aren't saying that PSB should jump to settlements. However, the portrayal of settlements as an unnecessary expense and the advocacy of prolonging conflict between parents and PSB must be carefully considered by people with more real-world experience than is demonstrated by the auditors. As we talk about process improvements and holding people accountable, please note we don't make widgets here, we educate children. These processes need to ensure students get services they need and that people are held accountable when they don't. We're running out of time, but Section 9, again, doesn't answer why or which interpretation of IDA grants grant rules was correct. It does make clear that when OSS gave detailed input, OAF and the superintendent did not use it to build the budget. Perhaps that's the answer to the why in number 2. More importantly, this report fails to highlight the gap in leadership that brought us to this point. This report lays bare a completely dysfunctional central office. This report speaks of controls and consequences, but utterly fails to point out the astounding lack of leadership that allowed this culture of distrust to usurp processes and for this complete communication breakdown to occur. Moving forward, we must ensure that our central office is run by leaders who insist on collaboration and a shared vision of putting all PSB students first. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Monak and Ms. Dantowitz. Next up, we have Kevin Walton, followed by Avi Liss.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Walton. I'm the proud parent of 2 boys at Florida Rough and Ridley. My oldest will be entering 2nd grade next year, and I'm here because I'm deeply concerned by the proposal to reduce the number of 2nd grade classes at FRR from 5 to 4. Like many families, we moved to Brookline for the public schools, but it seems like in the last couple of years it's been in a free fall. There's a real question I want to put to you tonight. Where is your oversight? Where is the leadership from this school committee? This proposed cut from 5 to 4 classes is being made by 2 people who won't even be here next year. An interim principal who did not get the permanent role at FRR, and a superintendent who resigned following major financial mismanagement. That's not just bad optics, it's reckless governance. This decision should be made by the incoming principal and superintendent, not by those exiting their posts. The damage is already visible at FRR. My son's 1st grade teacher, a 10-year veteran of FRR, took a leave of absence this January, citing burnout as the reason. In her own words, and I quote, "I often feel as though I am unable to truly be present due to the ever-growing list of demands and responsibilities, a revolving door of leadership, regular budget crises, and an unsustainable level of burnout." So let me ask you, if that's the reality for teachers today, will reducing the number of classes and increasing class size help reduce burnout? Will removing support and consolidating classrooms improve student outcomes? Or will it further erode trust in the Brookline Public Schools and drive more good educators out? FRR is the largest K-8 school in the district. It serves a wide range of communities and learners and includes a significant population of ELLs. The impact of this decision could be devastating on these students and the broader school community. This decision should be taken with great care and proper debate. Yet this process has had no transparency, no public discussion, and no data shared. And I ask, where is your oversight? I urge you to pause this decision, let the next principal and superintendent evaluate it properly with full data, community input, and a clear understanding of the educational impact. Our kids deserve better, our educators deserve better, and Brookline deserves better. You need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to Ms. Paradise. Okay. Next, we have Mr. Joshua Paradise, followed by Arthur Conquest.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. To the school committee, thank you so much for the tremendous work that you put in. The schools are extremely important, and I really appreciate it, and I think our community really appreciates it. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of yourself and thought, I don't look like that, but the camera doesn't lie. The way I felt the last few years watching the administration of the Brookline schools, it's like, I don't look like that. When I read the auditor's report, I feel like that's not us. The Brookline schools are great. We want to believe that the schools are great and well run, but the camera doesn't lie and the auditor's report didn't lie. I assume all of you have read it in full. I won't rehash individual points. The report paints a picture of a school district with severe management problems, behavior that borders on criminal, and at a minimum, incompetent. I'm here tonight to ask the school committee for 3 things. 1, take data seriously. Please hire an interim superintendent and a superintendent who understands the importance of data-driven decision-making and is able to instill a culture and practice of making decisions that are grounded in data. If you don't receive the data you need to make informed decisions, you must exercise your authority and demand the data. 2, be transparent. As a result of the recent performance, there is a serious lack of trust. It will take time and effort to rebuild trust. Transparency is an important first step. And 3, support academic excellence. There is an adage, you can't manage what you don't measure. We measure how many students are falling behind. We don't, as far as I have seen, even attempt to measure how students are excelling. We don't provide opportunities to challenge our academically strong students. Please start measuring academic excellence. And I'll close with one example. If our students were running track, a sport I think many people can relate to, it's as if we asked all of them to be able to run a 7-minute mile. Some would struggle. The best, they'd already be there. But when we push our students, they can do more. In the past month, 10 boys on our Brookline High School track team ran the mile under 5 minutes. Several ran under 4 minutes and 30 seconds. I mean, that's really fast. That's excellent. Let's bring that winning spirit to academics. Thank you for your attention and your service.
Thank you, Mr. Paradise. Next up is Arthur Conquest. Okay. It's not back on? Okay, so we're moving on then to number 5, which is presentations and discussions of current issues. First is an update on the process to identify an interim superintendent. Mr. Weintraub, can you give us an update, please?
I'll be with you in a second. Wrong glasses. Okay. So I wrote a memo to you defining the process that we will undertake to find an interim superintendent in a timely manner. And the search committee has been selected, although I've been in conversation and others have been in conversation with the union president. And so there are some questions that remain in terms of the finalization of the search committee. I proposed that we would have 4 school committee members on the search committee, myself, Val Frias, Andy Liu, and Suzanne Federspiel. I proposed that there were 2 school administrators on the committee, the long-term and respected Lincoln School Principal Brian Denizio, and the recent Bob Sperber Award winner, SWS Dean Dan Bresman. 4 teachers, and I selected 4 recent Caverly Award winners so that the committee is represented by some really powerful and amazing teachers. 2 elementary teachers, Olivia Rayelt and Amanda Kretschmar, and 2 Brookline High School teachers, Kira Flynn Carson and Elizabeth Crane Tipton. 4 parents, Metco parent Keith Lazama, who's a Metco parent, and he was formerly the head of Metco. CPAC representative Linda Monarch, Hagar Delshad from the Baker School, and Dan Saltzman from the Pierce School. And 2 BHS students, Adithi Jayashankar and Kiran Bhatia. I propose that the search committee, once it's finalized, will meet to review applications and decide whom to interview. This should happen hopefully next week. Interviews are scheduled. The committee meets to create interview questions for each candidate, and that should happen by June 2nd. And then the interviews are completed, and the search committee recommends finalists to the full school committee, It's preferable, I wrote, to have at least 2 finalists, and this should be done by June 9th. And then the school committee interviews the finalists and selects the interim superintendent, preferably by a unanimous vote. This should be done by June 13th. And then the contract for the interim superintendent is finalized, and the interim superintendent is announced to the community on June 16th, and that person begins work on July 1st. That's the process that I defined, and again, there are some questions that have been raised.
And Mr. Cooper in Human Resources is going to work with the union and with us on finalizing the committee, and then making sure that any appropriate confidentiality agreements are undertaken, and that the documents regarding applications are provided to that committee so that we can then schedule and move forward. Sarah.
So I'd like to start with just clarifying questions. And this is not at all edits. I'm not looking to change what you have here. It looks excellent to me. I'm looking to learn more because I haven't been through one of these before. So could you just walk me through my 3 questions are as follows. Because we're trying to do this quickly, what happens when not everybody can show up? Is there a way to meet without having the full list of people? How does that work?
So the committee, the search committee will be 15, 16 people strong. And I've communicated with them because sometimes it's impossible to get everybody together at the same time, that if 1 or 2 people miss a particular meeting, maybe we can zoom in, or if that's not possible, we just move on with the number of people who are on the committee at that point in the search.
That's great. I was also wondering, why do some people advocate for a professional search or a search from an outside party? And if you're going to, toot your own horn, what are we saving by not doing that?
We'll save about $75,000. I have a lot of experience doing searches, and I've never used a search firm. And my experience, I have participated in searches with search firms. And my experience with search firms, they come into a community and they want to know the existential essence of the community. What are your values? To me, that's totally unnecessary. We know who we are. We know what we're looking for. In this particular case, we're looking for a superintendent with experience. We're looking for a superintendent who's got a reasonable sense of humor, someone who listens carefully, who's an excellent communicator. We know, and the committee will determine the criteria for what we're looking for. And again, to me, it seems like a waste of money, not a waste of money, but money not well spent necessarily, and a process that we can define more readily because we're here, we know the school system, and we know what we need. We all have had experience with a variety of leaders, and I think we'll be very successful in determining finalists and determining the person that we choose.
That's really helpful. My third question and final question is just when you do an interim search compared to a permanent search, how do they tend to differ? Not in I understand how they would differ in candidates and and contracts and all that, but is it a shorter list of people that are involved? Is there any difference in terms of what's before us?
No. There's a comprehensive group of people who are on the search committee. The process is basically the same. If you look at resumes, you decide who you want to interview, you make questions up, and interview people and make recommendations. One of the most important things for me, because I've been a part of the system for a long time in a variety of ways, at a certain point, the search committees lost power to recommend, and they only could make comments on the candidates before them. To me, if you want the community to support the final individual who gets the job, you want to feel like you were part of that on the search committee. And so it's hugely important to me to give voice to the search committee so that they feel when they leave their portion of the process that they've made a contribution and that their voices were heard. And what happens is when you have a credible search with a search committee, and they choose somebody or they recommend a few choices to the full school committee, they tend to support that person strongly. And if they feel alienated from the process, there's a chance that because of the alienation that they felt that they didn't have a big voice in the decision, they're less likely to support the person who's chosen. And I think that, you know, what we've designed and what we will design hopefully for the permanent position will allow this community, consisting of students and school committee members, of course, and teachers and administrators in the system and parents. I think the community should look at that process, these processes, and say, well done. You included our voices were meaningful, and we appreciate that.
So I can just say a little bit more, Sarah. So for the permanent, we're going to move obviously a bit more slowly. We're going to look to identify categories, parents, educators, things like that, and then put out a call for people who are interested to be in touch. So there'll be a bit more of process around that. And for example, Kieran will be off at college by that time, so there'll be just a bit more of the community will have some more time to offer their time to that process in one way or another.
Val, if I could say that I moved quickly on this because of the timeline, and I received lots of letters of application. People wanted to serve on the committee, lots. And the way I picked a METCO parent, that was easy. Then I picked a CPAC parent because that was recommended. So I had 2 open parent seats on the committee. And I just picked the two letters that I felt were most compelling. I mean, they were, you know, many very qualified, credible people who wanted to be on the search committee. But, you know, there's a lot of people in this community. I needed to pick just 2. So that's the way it worked.
Thank you. Anybody? Mariah?
Thank you for this. I think I'm really impressed you pulled this together. I think it's really strong, and the timeline is obviously incredibly tight, but that's what you've got to work with. And I appreciate that you're trying to wrap it up by June 16th, because not only is, like, if all goes well, you have 2 weeks, and if anything slips, you still have a little bit of time. So, which realistically it will. I wonder about the presence. I don't see any central office role, and I'm just wondering if that might be someone on the committee.
Alvin Cooper will be on it. It's not on that memo. Alvin will be on the committee.
I see. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
As a voting member?
No, he's ex officio.
Yes, so ex officio voting or ex officio non-voting?
Non-voting.
I see.
Non-voting.
Okay.
Carolyn, and then Donna, I think I saw your hand.
Just super quick conversationally, responding to what Bob just said about sort of process. And I happen to know, well, I know Dan well, I know Kira well, and I know Hagar and Dan Saltzman well, and those are awesome parents. I've worked really closely with Hagar. She's a neighbor, super smart, really compassionate person, and Dan has a ton of experience working with principals, with superintendents in schools, being a Brookline parent. So looks great.
It sounds like your daughter did get into SWS.
She did. She did, and graduated and got into college thanks to Kira and Dan. Kira wrote her a fabulous recommendation letter. So Kira is amazing. I think we all know that. Hagar and Dan Saltzman are just excellent parents, so that's exciting.
Thank you.
Donna?
I want to say thank you, Bob. This is amazing, and I'm super excited that you're chairing the search. I had 2 questions. One is about compensation. I think we got an email from a Brookline parent with some thoughts on compensation. Is that something that falls under the purview of the committee at all, or do you feel comfortable with the compensation that we're offering?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
For this position? Is it competitive?
Oh, the salary?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not up to me.
Okay, so it's not posted?
negotiated, it's not posted.
Okay, all right.
It's, you know, the
Okay.
salary will be commensurate with your experience.
Okay, wonderful. So the second question is, I know it says here that it's a preference to have 2 finalists, but have you given any thought to what a scenario would look like, or what we would do if we end up with 1 finalist?
We'll cross that bridge.
Got it.
By law, we're required to interview 2 finalists. Any other? Kieran?
Yes. Could I just ask, whether this is for Dr. Bob or whether it's for Suzanne, Does the number, or did the number of applicants from last week change for this position? Or is it?
I think we have about 12. I mean, last I
I think it's more than that. I think it's 16 or 17.
Oh, great.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah. Alvin's going to put it in a folder or something for.
Yes, he's going to set up a folder for, once we approve this. I would like us to think about adding someone from central office as a voting member. I think that it's probably a good idea to have someone who would be working closely to be on that committee. So just a thought. I see Mariah nodding. Sort of curious what others think about that. Okay.
Can you say more about that, Val? Like why you're thinking that or why you're recommending it? And how it aligns with past practice?
It aligns evenly with past practice, and I think just in terms of the working relationships, it's important for someone who has that direction of communication as well to be involved. That's my personal opinion. Betsy, you were...
Just one quick clarification that it is a working subcommittee of the school committee, so we'll need to meet, post these meetings and meet open meeting law requirements of 48 hours in advance. So just something we have to plan as we move ahead.
Thank you.
I think that, as you alluded to, Bob, earlier, there's this whole idea of the committee having buy-in and ownership in the process, and so having a representative from central office who's a voting member also sort of ties to that, I'll say, vertical line of people who are engaged in the process, who have the opportunity to speak to colleagues and their connections and feel invested in the process and included in the process. So I also agree with that point.
All right, I'll speak with Val about that.
Any other, Jesse?
I was just going to piggyback on Mariah's comment and support one of the deputy directors to potentially be a member of that. Given our current situation, I would point over to the corner there to Dr. who's very busy doing other things.
Yes, she's staring at her screen.
Yeah. There you go. Thank you. Right. No, we were just going to maybe appoint you. Okay. Recommend the appointment. Thank you. I think it would be very valuable.
Andy's hand. Andy.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to pick up on what Betsy said about the open meeting law. So I kind of want to get clear on what this committee can do in executive session and what needs to be done in open session. So my reading of the guidance from the Attorney General's office is that interviews and sort of deliberation or consideration of candidates can happen in executive session. What we need to do in open session is to formulate the interview questions. Is that how, Val, Bob, you understand this?
So, yes, sort of. The preliminary interviews can happen in executive session, and the finalist interviews need to happen in open session.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, yes.
Okay, so our open session meeting would be to formulate the questions that we would then ask in executive session.
We'd actually also need to meet, just like any other executive session, we need to meet in open session and then move to go into executive session.
Mm-hmm.
The same way that we do for any other item on our executive session list. Anybody else?
This is not actually related to this search. So I'm slipping it in, but we can also cover it under new business later. I'm just wondering if there's an update for the OTL deputy search?
Let's do that in new business.
Okay, thank you.
Too late, I beat you to the punch.
Okay, anybody else? Suzanne?
Well, so I'm still a little confused about what we can do in open session and what we can do in executive session. So our first meeting, we'll gather, and that'll be an open session.
Yes.
And we will come up with the questions and the criteria.
Well,
Okay.
my guidance would be that we will, and I've talked to Alvin about this, we will distribute all the applicants and their resumes and application letters to all the members of the committee, and I'll ask them to review them before we meet.
Okay.
So what I said in this memo is that I'd like them to choose their 5 top candidates, and then we'll sort of, and send them to me, and I'll analyze the voting in terms of who people want to interview. And, you'll get a consensus that way. And so then the first meeting will be open, and we'll be deciding on, we'll be finalizing who we're going to interview, and then we'll be also developing the questions for the interviews. And I know that, was it Betsy or Val sent me some recommended questions that were part of?
That was Betsy. That would definitely have been Betsy.
Yeah. You know, but
And
we'll-
so, but what about confidentiality?
Yeah, I was going to say, we don't actually discuss in open session until the finalists who the candidates are for confidentiality purposes for anybody who has a current job.
Okay, great.
So just going, just again, that first session, you anticipate open, and we're going to talk about the questions.
Yes.
And then from there, we could go into an executive
Yes.
session and talk about the
Exactly.
5 candidates we each came up with.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, so that would be an executive session. And then we would have another meeting where we start interviewing those candidates, and that would be an executive session.
Yeah, the interviews, the initial interviews, executive session, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on this before we move on to budget?
Just to follow up on Mariah's question, did you say OTL or OSS? I wanted to make sure I heard you right.
I said OTL, yes.
May I add OSS?
Of course, I'll
Thank you.
consider it a
Partner?
friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment, thank you.
Carolyn?
Bob, would you anticipate that the school and Val, that the school committee would get updates along the way, or does this all happen so quickly? Or would we have like an executive session, just out of our own curiosity?
Given our meeting schedule and Bob's schedule, it might be one and the same.
Fine.
If we slip, we could look to do an executive session update. Anything else? Okay, so moving on to 5B, budget updates. Mariah or Dr. Guillory, who's doing?
So Val, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Sorry?
Do we have to vote on accepting this process, or just move on?
We don't have to, but maybe it's perhaps a good idea.
I
So
vote to accept Bob's process as outlined.
You move it?
I moved it, and that's what I meant to say, I move it.
There's a second.
I wasn't going to announce it like
As
that.
amended.
As amended and with the inclusion of a central office administrator explicitly.
Okay.
And Jesse seconds. Okay, Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Donna?
Sorry, I have a little OCD. So you added with the
Addition of a central office administrator to the roster of voting members on the committee.
okay, and but you both are going to discuss that, or that's decided?
That's in Mariah's motion.
Oh,
Not
Not
the who.
Person.
okay. Okay, yes.
And sorry, I'm going to be, does administrator imply a certain level, or does it, can it be staff person? I don't know, do you really mean?
Mariah.
Not to be super picky, but I'm just curious.
Um,
Should it say like,
I'm not going to specify.
fine,
Yes.
we know what you mean, generally.
Yeah.
Or we'll figure it out. Yes,
Bob?
I vote yes, and I recommend that we rent out Fenway Park for the full committee meetings.
Andy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay. So now budget updates. Is it Mariah or Dr. Guillory?
It's me, I think. Correct, Linus? Okay, so I'm going to get us back on time. I'm going to get us ahead of time, as is my, if you all cooperate, we are going to be way ahead of schedule. I'm putting that on you now. This isn't a me problem, this is a you problem if we're not. So for our Q3 update, we actually had a Q3 update, if you recall, at our last meeting, and we were going to get an update yesterday afternoon with the question of, given the revised Q3 estimates of how the FY25 budget will close compared to the revised Q2 estimates of how the budget will close, what is the difference? This is like a complicated word problem for math. How are we now going to close it using revolving funds? However, there was a miscommunication. That question didn't get answered yesterday. We will get it from Dr. Givens in the next week or so to our email, just so we have it. So that is the update under 5B1. Any questions on that before we proceed? No, okay. And also on that note, we will have a meeting in June to review how that's coming together even more. So more to come on the FY25 close. Then other FY '25 and '26 budget updates. We discussed the current situation of BASE's summer programming. You have slides in your packet. If you look at sorry, it's the starting after the OSS information. So I think it's slide 4 or 5. So you can see that there's an income statement on the first one showing the expected year-end close for BASE, and it looks like they will end the year with a revolving fund balance just under $4,000. And then the summer programming, if you look at the top of the next slide, currently they have enrollment of they have 107 students currently enrolled. They're projecting another 50 or so. But that would be a total enrollment of around 150 or 160 compared to 270 last year. When we all had taken the vote earlier this year to continue BASE over the summer, that was contingent. Well, I won't say it was contingent, but that was with the understanding that BASE would have strong summer programming. It looks like, and they will have strong summer revenues that would offset the ability to keep the staff program in place. With that said, because of the changes that are here, it's not clear that we would end up revenue neutral for the summer programming. So there's questions about, for example, are there summer programs that we could consolidate? Obviously, our primary goal is to ensure that students and their adults who care for them have continuity of summer programming and are hopefully in a program that they like. We want to make sure, we don't want to leave anybody in the lurch for summer programming, whether it's childcare or just enrichment. And so I'm going to meet with Michelle McGlone, the director of BASE, tomorrow morning to look at some of the more detailed numbers. She sent me some more detailed numbers earlier today, which I got the chance to skim, but we're going to meet tomorrow just to have greater clarity. And the questions that I had asked her since our meeting yesterday were to show how the enrollment for BASE has typically gone in the weeks beforehand, because she had said to us that this is a pretty typical point in time for them and they get a lot of enrollment still to come. And it would just be helpful, I think, from our perspective to have that, to see that data so we can feel confident that there's quite a bit more still coming in. And then also to look at some of the programs and, for example, where there's very low registration, can we consolidate children into other programs with stronger registration, and also consider partnering with REC, who also run summer programming, so that, for example, if a student is in theater and doesn't want to do basketball, just to give 2 examples of BASE programs, that there might be another program in REC that they might be able to slide into. And REC has very graciously agreed to try and work with us if it becomes a need. But they also need some information. So much more to come. There was a sense in the community, and I just want to put this out there in case anyone didn't hear, that they thought we were voting to close BASE tonight. And there was no vote in the agenda, and that was never going to happen. And I'm not sure where the miscommunication or misunderstanding came from, but I just want to make that very public that that is not where we are at right now. And we want to make sure that we have a smooth transition, so much so that if you actually look on that slide, there's a lot of sunset tasks. I mean, there's a lot of work that's going into making sure that this transition and progression is done really carefully and well, so that there's no sudden changes. And we're working hard and still talking with REC as well. So that's the update on BASE. And again, yesterday we didn't have a lot of time. That I think came in like the last 5 minutes of the meeting or so. So I don't know if there's other questions or comments now. I think Michelle was going to join us, but I don't see her on Linus's screen online. Is she online? No, okay.
Andy had his hand up. Do you have a question or?
Not anymore, unless Mariah, you had anything more to say about. Yeah, I was just looking at that last line on the sunset task about transition to REC. So, like, where things stand there right now. You just said that you're in discussions.
So REC has been speaking with Michelle, and she has been providing them with information, and they are still working through the data that she's been providing them. So no, they have not affirmed or denied where they're at. They're still doing their analysis that they had said that they would do. And they had told us originally it would take about 6 to 8 weeks, and I think it's been about 4 so far. So everything is still progressing. And again, I'm going to meet with Michelle tomorrow and get a little bit more information on the summer.
Okay, thank you.
Suzanne, and then Bob.
Yeah, thanks. I just had two questions. I'm just wondering about this vacation sick day payout of 32,000. That's just, seems high if the salaries were only 57,000, so I'm kind of curious what that's about. So that'd be.
It's contractual as far as I know.
But it's not just for the summer.
No, it's accumulated.
Okay, so
Yes.
that's not a summer cost, but that's the carrying it forward.
No, I believe that's probably a full year cost, and if people were to take vacation, obviously that would, or sick time.
Right.
During the summer, that would also.
Well, that makes more sense.
That liability would reduce, yes.
That makes more sense. And then it says potential revenue in August. Those are, they're not currently enrolled, but they might be. What?
I don't know.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Bob?
Yeah, I just, I'm asking for some clarity, which everybody probably understands, but I don't understand. So there's a lot of noise in the community about base and about the cut of $56,000 or something like that. Where do we stand on that?
The school committee voted to pause base after the summer. There's the 56,000, which is the immediate number, but the larger number is several hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is not currently accounted for in our budget because base is projected to lose money again next year. That we would have to find a way to absorb, in addition to the 56,000, which is the benefits cost of some of the staff.
And so we're going into the new year, the new fiscal year, with a cut with a school committee cut for base.
Base would be paused at the end of the summer.
Right.
And we have been in talks with REC to see if there's a way to transition the base academically oriented programs for adults and children into the recreation department offerings as well, which are more recreational offerings.
So that might solve the people's questions?
That would, I think that is the goal, is to have the program continue and be able to make those offerings, but as part of REC and delivered in collaboration and through the REC model, yes.
Because that was a big campaign issue.
Yeah.
A lot of people said, well, are you supporting base? I said, absolutely, 110%. I didn't know what that meant.
You're not supposed to say that part out loud.
In terms of spending money, I have a long relationship with the Brookline adult and community.
I think everyone on the committee, when we took that vote, unanimously expressed the concern and the sadness that it framed for them, and but like many other votes we took during that process, it was a really tough vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mariah.
Yeah. But REC so far, just to say, has been really fabulous in terms of thinking through this. They're really taking it seriously and excited about the possibility of being able to carry that base mantle forward.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Maria, I'm just curious, so given that unfortunately we are pausing base altogether for next year, but we have some potential concerns about the summer, and we've been talking about the BCF has presented itself a couple of times to us recently. Do you know whether base has gone to the BCF at all for any kind of emergency assistance to just at least get through the summer?
I don't know. I can ask Michelle tomorrow.
And somebody, I don't know, I wish there was the data. Somebody told me that the summer programs do serve, have a lot of students of color. I don't know if that's true, so could be. I would assume that they have
Base has
pursued
had
all
a strong
avenues, but-
scholarship program dedicated to BHA students and has also, and used ARPA funds multiple years to pay for that.
yeah.
So, but unfortunately, those funds are,
Right.
again, no longer available.
Right. So just wondering if I would assume they're aware, but just curious.
Jesse?
Yeah, quick comment. One, I wanted to thank Mariah publicly for the extra work you're putting in to help base navigate a very rough sea, and everyone appreciates it in the community and certainly the school committee. Second thing I was going to say is that when this hit, when these letters started coming in and questions came in, I sort of broke my normal rule of not responding to town meeting listserv things, but I felt it was important to get ahead of it. And so I answered the question in a very brief way, just to clarify, sort of as you did now, and then found in the PSB side of my email your response as well. And they actually matched pretty well. So I just basically clarified for people that we're not voting and that and exactly what the process is going to be. And I then started getting comments back from people saying, thanks for clarifying. You know, we didn't want it to blow up on the town meeting side either. So with town meeting next week. So thanks for all your efforts here.
Sure, and if we're done with base, there's one minor last thing okay. Donna?
I'm sorry, I have a really quick question. So is that 26,000, is that related to the discrepancy in the projected enrollment for the summer?
No, that's
Or not
if
necessarily?
the current revenue, I think the potential revenue refers to the 43 more students now that I'm doing this math. And I'm presuming they're posting it in August because it would come in during July and August. But anyways, so if their total revenue for the 3 months is 63,000, and as you see below the 89,000, then right now the projection is a loss of $26,500 for the summer, which originally, if you recall, we had been anticipating essentially a break even. But again, Michelle and I will meet tomorrow about that, and we'll see
Well,
what's
you know, going. it is a break, I mean, they're actually making money, but you're putting on this vacation sick day, which is from so the summer program itself, she's right, is not only going to break even, it's going to make some money.
Oh, the other thing that I'm glad you mentioned that, Linus, is the 89,000 doesn't actually, if you look, the lines where it says wages for instructors are blank. So this is not even including the costs of the staff to run the summer programs. This is just the central office staff. So that net 26.5
I thought that was the staff.
no, there's additional costs on top of that. So again,
okay.
I appreciate what Michelle sent me earlier today. In looking at it very quickly, they've done a greater analysis of net revenues as opposed to gross revenues. So that'll be helpful to understand and more soon. But again, the important thing is that we wanted to keep this program open through the summer to be able to support students and families. And they're a partner with Project Discovery, which is really important to be able to find full day childcare for people. So we want to make sure that we're not leaving people in the lurch. And that's the critical thing here as we move ahead. Okay, we're done with base. I have one last item. Are we done with base?
I want to make sure we're done, but yes.
Okay, so the last item of finance last night is a housekeeping item around changing the school allocation vote. We had voted a month ago, April 17th, for the 142,000. This is on the last slide here. Thank you, Betsy, for pulling it up. We had taken some of the things that you see here as debits against our gap, but actually they're supposed to be credits against our revenue. If that doesn't make sense to you, don't worry about it, move on. The new vote is we have to, just trust me. The new amount for the schools is the bottom line there. Finance recommended this to the full school committee. Select board has already voted this. Advisory committee has already voted this. So now full school committee is the last leg of the three-legged stool to vote this before it goes to town meeting next week. So I'm going to make a motion for school committee to recommend a PSB budget for FY26 of $142,792,591.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Okay, Bob, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you, Mariah. Next, we have a discussion of the deficit review report conducted by Clifton Larson Allen. When we got the report, I reached out to CLA. They're not able to come and speak to us until June, but I thought it wise to docket it for discussion. So if anyone has thoughts they want to discuss about their initial reactions to the report, now's the time. Mariah.
Earlier today at Town School Partnership, I read into the record a long document that I'm not going to read into the record today, but I will share with you all by email later on. And Betsy, maybe you can post it on the meeting materials if that's okay, about my thoughts about it. But I think I'm glad that you, actually, I want to say a couple of things more about it. At that point, I noted a couple of things. One was Chaz Carey highlighted the value of the letter that came from the CPAC co-chairs earlier today and the importance of the context that the letter provided to a report that doesn't necessarily know all of the ins and outs of Massachusetts special education. I was really appreciative of his focus on that. And I also want to highlight that at Town School Partnership earlier today, Susan Givens, our Deputy for Admin and Finance, could not attend. And it was very intentional, and she's not here tonight, and it was very intentional that we would not get too far ahead of that conversation because she is an integral partner to that conversation. So I agree with both of those statements. And among many other things, I said, we really need to be able to talk to them because there was some questions that persist from this report. There were some great recommendations, I thought, some questions that persist, and some factual errors that really, it's too bad that the report got put out with some of these because, as we all know, the first impression is the one that really lasts, and it doesn't matter how much you correct things later on, it's out there. So I'm glad they're going to come talk to us. I think that's really important, and looking forward to collaborating on future work around this.
Thank you, Mariah. Jesse?
I guess one question I had is, maybe I just missed it somewhere. How is it that the report came to the town on last Friday, and it was published in Brookline.news, and we got the email with the document sort of the same day it went out? It sort of would seem that on the journalist side, they had access to our town school report before we did, potentially. The town side may have had it, but now, again, I mean, to Mariah's, observations, which are crystal clear to me, if there are misperceptions, obfuscations, alterations, and any other actions you want to add to the report, they've now been placed into the public by Brookline.news before, I don't know, personally, I had even a chance to read it and digest it 10 times to read through and underline sort of every other sentence with questions. So I'm just wondering, from the school side, school committee side, was there some kind of issue in the process that, if the town authorized the CLA audit and it was to provide back to the school, there's nothing in this report that talks about the town. It's all about things that happen within the school in terms of the relationship on the upper management side and decisions that were made and delays and mistakes and, Excel formulas. It's all related to the school. How was it that it got into the media before we really had a chance to review, to meet with CLA and all, even if we had pushed it back, even if Chaz had to say it was the end of June, like after Memorial Day or after a town meeting even, what would this sort of leaves so many questions and perhaps even mistakes out there that have now been publicized.
I don't have full answers to that, but my understanding is that the town side who did commission the report wanted it out before town meeting, and we did get the final report at the same time that it was released to the public or near to, and I believe that Dr. Guillory was given the report over the weekend, but certainly not with any sort of business day time to reflect on it. I don't know the full rationale for why, but I do know that there was a concern that holding on to it, as opposed to putting it out in the public, was not the preferred method of release. I don't know any more than that. Sorry, Jesse. Carolyn.
Yeah, I read all of this the other day when it came out, and I think it did say in Chaz's memo, as Val just said, Jesse, there was a desire to make sure that this was digested before town meeting. So I don't think there was ever a desire to wait longer. So maybe I'm missing something. I'm not super following what the.
My question was not about it necessarily pushing past town meeting, because perhaps there are budgetary implications that might put town meeting into a difficult situation. My question is more basic. We got a report from the auditors that came to the town last Friday, and within the Saturday and Sunday, by Monday it was already in the newspaper, and it's sort of, wouldn't we have needed some time, the town and the school together, to look at the report, analyze it just a bit, and if it waited 2 more days, and we identified issues before they were publicized, that may have been a better strategy.
But you can't, I mean, the media is the media. People send something to the media, then, I mean, I'm not sure what your concern is, that it was at the media. The media had it before.
Yeah. I mean, for it to come out so quickly when we were just getting it means they must have had time to, and again, this is not a criticism of the media. They were provided the report very quickly, and perhaps even before we had a chance to really read and digest it.
Mariah?
Dr. Guillory, when PSB staff were provided with the report over the weekend, were there corrections that you requested be made, and if so, how was that request taken?
So Susan, myself, and Karen reviewed the report and communicated. I think it was Susan that sent a series of questions and clarifications to Chaz, to the town administrator, noting that, I think similar to what you're saying, Jesse, that a report of this magnitude, you weren't given the opportunity to say, here's some clarifications, here's some deeper context, here's actually some errors that need.
Sorry to interrupt. I think the mic has gone off, so we can't hear anything that's going on.
I saw the red light there.
There
So
you
let
go.
me start over. Because I don't know how much you got or you didn't. So Karen, Susan, and I think it came late Friday night or late Sunday. So it was late when we got it. We all read it and had our dialogue amongst ourselves about some questions or clarifications. And then I think Tuesday is when the report actually went live out, I think is, if I'm remembering correctly. But there wasn't an opportunity. So Susan then sent, Susan sent in clarifications, questions, or concerns that we had as a district administration about the timing, and we weren't given the latitude or the opportunity to give that feedback prior to the final report going out as well. So what else did I say there?
She sent them to Chaz.
Yes, she sent them to the town administrator.
Sarah and then Suzanne?
So when are we going to discuss this further? I know that we'll read what Mariah has sent to us. And will there be a time when we might, that our senior leadership might point out some errors and we might discuss some of the findings?
I haven't, Susan's out. I've asked CLA to come in. I got an out of office from the person, but understood that they could come in June. Suzanne?
Yeah, I was just going to say, on the copy I had, it was confidential draft. So I don't know when it went from a confidential draft to, is it the same report that we have here? And
No.
I only got Chaz's email.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You didn't get a confidential draft?
No. Ooh.
Yes, the plot thickens.
We got sort of what looks like 3-year-old.
I did too, but it had confidential draft all over.
Ooh.
I've got it here somewhere. Okay, well, I just wondered when it went from that to handing it out.
Any other, Donna?
Sorry, for clarification then, Dr. Guillory, you just made reference to some communication that went to the firm with clarifications, to the administrator. So will that be part of the discussion in June? Do we have, in other words, should we have seen that, or will we have access to those?
I think that was a conversation or an email from you all, right?
Yes, from Susan to the administrator, but she'll be willing to share her perspective as well as our collective perspective on it as well.
Okay, that would,
Yeah, I think we
yeah,
can.
that would be helpful for me, just particularly we were just at Driscoll the other night, and not that we need to discuss every aspect of it, but it would just be helpful context for me when I'm talking to community members.
Anyone else on this round? Mariah?
Sorry, I just want to say that I think you said that the town commissioned the report, but I don't believe that's strictly accurate. I believe the Town School Partnership commissioned the report in partnership with the school committee. And I just want to pick up a little bit on what Jesse said, is that it does feel a little bit like that process was not necessarily, the rolling out was not necessarily reflective of that.
I'll
Initial
correct myself
setup.
and say the town paid for the select board.
I thought it was the town administrators fund paid for it. But anyways, yes, they
Town
paid
side
for it, but
fund
it was
paid
the
for it.
town school partnership that commissioned it.
Jesse?
Yeah, in section 8A, there's a sentence, I just want to understand what it means. It says when, sort of down towards the bottom of that first paragraph, it states that current OSS staff were instructed by the previous deputy superintendent for student services to not include settlement numbers in reports prepared for school committee. I mean, I guess I'd want to know, like, how did that happen? This is 5 lines down from the bottom of that long paragraph of 8A under observation finding. It starts at least in my printout, it starts 5 lines from the bottom of that paragraph where it says current OSS staff. So I'm concerned. I mean, it's just put in there, and there, you know, we know that there's not much in the recommendation, as much as I'm concerned that was a policy violation? Was this a communication issue? This is, when it says we're instructed by, it sounds to me like the auditors investigated and were told that this is what they were told. And so it's like a sort of, you know, he said, she said kind of thing, but this is a pretty strong statement to make. And I'm just wondering if CLA will be able to provide some more context.
We have our deputy here.
So
Yes, but
I'm not sure if they will or they won't. We'll have to ask when they're here. They might, I don't know what sort of confidentiality they offered people that they interviewed or not. I don't know that the methodology in terms of their interview process or procedure.
I'd like to highlight in what you're saying right now that that is a disappointment in this report, because, you know, if they're just going to give us kind of a narrative of what was said in interviews, it doesn't really feel like an analysis. You know, there aren't dates of like, this is what happened and then this happened, you know? So I would say that, you know, Jesse is asking a question, but I'd like to add to that question that the report feels a little bit flimsy to me, or a little bit not in depth enough for the example that Jesse gave and for other examples where they didn't really seem to show us the data of where they got their conclusion.
you know, I'm sorry. Thank you.
This is not about any of the specifics in the report, but more about this conversation. And I'm really interested in hearing everybody's analysis, and we all bring different lens and expertise to this. This was undertaken because of big issues that showed themselves over the last couple of years that, you know, have apparently and obviously been long brewing, structural issues, challenges that we're going to continue to have to face and address with our partners on the town side, the select board, the town administrator, the town school, through the town school partnership, the advisory committee, and town meeting. I'm a town meeting member. I've been an advisory committee member. And I believe that this was undertaken as an initiative and with the hope from our partners on the town side for us to all row in the same direction and be unified moving forward, as we are now on the override study committee. So just generally, I'm looking at this with a really open mind in terms of what the intention was and what we can do with this to move forward together as a town towards healthy structures and healthy systems. And we have challenges on both sides, but I think it's going to be really important to move less away from being sort of siloed. I don't even like saying like town side, school side. So that's my sort of overall look at this.
Bob?
Yeah, so I looked, I read the report several times. There's a lot of crypticness in the report, and there's a tremendous amount of noise in the community about the report, sort of damning criticism of the school system, school leadership, et cetera. And so I'm anxious to have a conversation here that's open and that responds to the information, misinformation that's within that report, so that the school committee can be clear with the community about what this means and what we will do. Because again, I mean, so much of it was difficult to understand in terms of who, what, where, when, and I don't know I don't know how damning the whole thing is, but it certainly feels like it. And I certainly feel like the community is viewing it like that. And we have to respond, and we have to reassure the community that we understand what's been going on, and we have to move forward, taking action and making things better. Thank you.
Donna and then Suzanne.
Thanks. I want to echo what Bob just said. I read the report and felt a little bit muddled about how we're going to be moving forward, what recommendations we're going to be taking up, what the timetable might look like, and sort of like, let me say it differently. I think it's really important that we're managing expectations and communicating clearly with the community about what comes next. And then just a little bit more in the vein of what Jesse pointed out, there were some, I really was confused about some of the recommendations, specifically about having a third party, the independent education evaluations, to come in and assess disagreements. Typically with special education settlements, you're working with outside counsel. Dr. Giller, you'll correct me if I'm wrong. Dr. Schmuckler, outside counsel that is supporting whoever is negotiating the settlement. So I'm assuming there's some advising going on there. So that was confusing to me. And also some of the, let me say this differently. I would be interested in understanding or contextualizing the increase in the number of settlements. When I read this and I looked at the increase in the number of settlements, that made me wonder what we are doing at the schoolhouse that we end up with an increased number of settlements. So I would like to explore the conversation in that vein.
It was Suzanne and then Mariah, yep.
I do remember that when this came up originally, that it was said we did not have much money to spend, the town was saying, and that it would be cryptic because we wanted it very quickly. So it's not as in-depth as they wanted to do, and it was not as, they were not going to answer all of our questions. That's not to excuse it, I'm just recalling that conversation we had. And so by its very nature, there's going to be things in here that are not in the depth that we would like at this point. But that's the report they came up with. And we can ask them for more clarification, but just again, we wanted the report very quickly. It was a very quick turnaround. And they told us they wouldn't be able to give us everything that we probably would want.
Mariah.
Dr. Schmuckler, could I ask you a couple of questions? I don't want to put you on the spot, so if you're not ready to give the answers on these, like, don't worry about putting it up. Okay, perfect. So my question is actually just regarding the recommendation to hire an independent educational evaluation contractor, just your thoughts, your reaction to that. And then my second one is regarding the settlements or the overall settlement situation, the growth in settlements, if you're comfortable, expressing whether that is, what might be the reason for the growth in settlements?
So I think on the IEEs, I think I shared with both my email, one of my communications with Susan, and I also went upstairs and had a conversation with town council, just because it seemed like that recommendation had really been held on to again talk about the process and the procedures within special education. And while that might be of use in certain circumstances, that it wasn't when you're in litigation and you're in that fork in the road, you're either litigating or you're settling. And so, sort of the notion that we were going to mandate a solution that was not going to be effective or efficient, nor help, it's not necessarily an effective strategy to deal with the issue. So that was my response. And I think sort of similarly to, I think what CPAC is, decontextualized, right? In terms of that. And so I was that was the one thing I just wanted people to sort of clarify, because it did seem like there was something that on the town side felt like that might be something people wanted to mandate or impose. And so I wanted to make sure that people understood what happens with settlements. It's complicated and complex before imposing a solution on the school district, if that was the direction that it seemed like, people wanted to do, that really was not going to be effective. I'm sort of similar to, I think, what Carolyn said. I think we need to be open to it. And as I said, there's certainly circumstances where that might be helpful, right? Often when you get to a settlement, families have already had their own IE, right, which supports where a family feels like their child needs to be. There may be circumstances where the school might want to do that, but it's not a solution to the actual problem. So I think that was one of the things that I certainly reacted to strongly, just because it felt like it was a solution that had really been kind of, felt heavily. And then, similarly, again, and, I think as Suzanne said, there wasn't a lot of context, and I also understand the level of the report. It wasn't a forensic audit. It wasn't an in-depth audit. It wasn't a management audit. I think the auditors were really clear about what they were and were not doing. But I think it's hard to get things where it's not contextualized, right? And so we have to provide the context. I similarly, and I think, well, I won't go on because you don't need my editorial. I'll just answer your question. And then, no, I felt,
Don't stop, keep going.
I mean, again, as I think because we, again, I read it Sunday night, and so Jody was Jody's last day, so myself and Susan and Jody and Dr. Guillory all, read it and said, in terms of, because we had said it was initially going out on Monday, and sort of similarly to say, and again, I've had audits to say, you get an audit, you review it, and there are always mistakes, and there's a little bit of back and forth with, this is actually an error, and then auditors might say, well, we disagree, and then that's fine, right? There's a process, and there just was no process here and no procedure. And then I felt similarly when, the Brookline News, I think we were actually in a meeting, and I was like, how did that happen so quickly? It's just been released. So I had the same reaction. And I also think the article did a disservice to what was in the audit. I think it did a disservice to the school district. I've actually communicated that in terms of, it did actually give some clarity to the things and the noise in the system, but people are not going to read the audit. They're going to mostly read a headline. And so similarly, I think, and it is out there, right? So I think, giving context, and I think, talking openly about it and answering openly about it is important, because it is going to town meeting. And I know there was a rush, but for inaccurate or decontextualized information to be used as part of decision-making obviously is not helpful for any of us as a school and a town. I think we need to move forward, and we need to move forward as a true partnership and with true collaboration, with true understanding. You know, I think shame, blame, and punitive hasn't got the district anywhere, and it's certainly not going to be helpful in terms of us moving forward. And, you know, I think there's deep systemic work that needs to be done at all levels with the town. It starts at the town school partnership, right? That at the top. So, you know, I think we need to have, you know, as a district, the auditors found what they found, right? And I think we can contextualize it for people. But it's really about what do we know? What have we learned? What's already been addressed and remedied, which a lot of it, some of it has. And then what's the work? You know, what's the structural and systemic work that we need to do as a district and that we need to do as a town school partnership?
Thank you. Thank you. Can I just make, okay.
Sure. So the settlement's a deep analysis. You know, I don't have an off-the-cuff piece. I think settlements are complicated. I think settlements can be and need to be tightly managed. In terms of looking at what's the cause, you know, I always think about, and I think, you know, this is some of the things I think CPAC is as well, are we missing programming in district? So you always think about, are there trends in the settlements? Or are we missing process and procedural pieces in the district? Are we not being proactive enough with parents when there are concerns and complaints? Because parents don't get to that point quickly. Parents get to that point over many, many months of frustration and feeling concerned about their children, right? There are lots of points of intervention when things are not going well for kids in schools, right? So it sort of needs, it's all of those, you know, there's not a one answer. So I think we need to look at all of that. What's our process and procedure? What are ETF processes and procedures? How do we deal with parent complaints? How do we think about wraparound, right? Which is a proactive, not a reactive approach to parent concerns. We have, and I know I've said this, and I know people look at me sometimes, we have robust resources in this district. Are we using them effectively and efficiently? Are we using them quickly enough? So I think it's a really broad systemic to answer that question around, you know, and it's probably a bit of all of the above.
I asked you that just because I think there was a statement about, you know, what's happening in the schoolhouse. And I just want to be like, it's not necessarily that someone's doing something wrong, right? Like, it's just like you're saying, it's really complicated and it's helpful.
Yeah.
It's not like we got the answer, but, you know, it's a complicated answer. And just, you know, I think it's easy for the community also to perhaps think, oh, there's an easy answer to settlements. And it's like, this is really complicated stuff. So, thank you.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I think the other point which they did look at is, you know, they're a process and they also need to be managed every step of the process when you're in settlement as well, right? The district always needs to be providing FAPE, right? And so as a district, when you put FAPE on the table, that is what we need to be doing. And so it's also making sure that that process is always in place, because it's easy, it's, you know, not easy, but I think they alluded to, you know, settlements rolling over. And so we need to look at that. Why is that happening? And what are the processes that happen? Because that's something we can take action on. So it's both how do you prevent unnecessary placements? How do you prevent getting to a place where you're settling? But also, you know, when you do have settlements, how are you managing them moving forward again? And that's just sort of process and procedure and operational pieces, and how do we work as a system and a structure?
So I want to just step back and thank you, Dr. Schmuckler, and thank Dr. Givens for all the work that you did on this. And all the work that you've done to ensure that FY26 is better than FY25 was. I think we went sort of all at the maybe issues that we saw, but I just want to make sure that we also highlight that the audit made mention of how much good work has been done and has been corrected for this FY26 budget. So I want to thank you and Dr. Gibbons specifically on that, and the FY25 close. And to just really think about this work, it's going to come in stages. It's deep work. It's not something that we're going to, you know, that some of these issues don't get fixed overnight. There's culture, there's history, there's time that it's going to take to analyze, let alone correct a lot of what we're talking about. Some of it may involve outside HR. There are lots of things that are raised in this report, town council, that we're going to really need to process through as a district and as a team. And I want to make sure that as we move out of this, that we look at moving forward. We need to look back to move forward, but that we are looking forward as the ultimate goal for this. So thank you again, Dr. Schmuckler and Carolyn. They're all dead. They're all dying.
I have my hand up if I could speak eventually.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to what Val was just saying, or along similar lines. I think for me, the two of the big takeaways, maybe the two biggest from this report, are number one, that the major driver of our budget problems is a salary budget that's increasing 7 to 8% year on year due to a combination of steps, lanes, and COLA. And it seems unrealistic to expect that to be much different. Even if we miraculously negotiated like a zero COLA contract, we would still be outrunning probably Proposition 2.5. So that's number one. And number two is that many of the problems identified have been or are being resolved. And that really wasn't emphasized enough, I thought, in some of the press coverage and subsequent discussion.
Carolyn, and then Mariah.
I really was going to say, even before you said it, and even before you said it, Andy, to acknowledge Dr. Schmuckler and Dr. Givens, who I've had more contact with and more observation of the last couple of years, and comparing just the level of commitment to structure and getting us cleaned up to be able to move forward in a healthy way. I also really want to make sure that's acknowledged because it's very, very clear.
Thank you, Carolyn. Mariah?
I just wanted to say that I think the report was a little bit confusing, just as a one factual question mark I have, is it reports 8%, but that was based on the original FY26 budget, in which we had increased by 30-something, I think, staff, and then we're now down by 5 staff, if my math is right. So I think that we'd gone up 31 staff and down 5, now we're down by 5 staff. So I just I think that 8% might be actually different from approved budget to approved budget as opposed to approved budget to initial budget request. Just to put that out there as something that, and they noted that the 8% was compared to the original, to the initial budget request.
Everybody's doing batteries, so anybody
Does anyone have a working
else on this? I actually think we're good on that.
Sign. The microphones are telling us.
All right, Jesse?
Maybe this is in the weeds, but I don't think so. The end of the report, the last paragraph, lack of protection of sensitive information. I'm almost sure in looking, I mean, this is not necessarily an OSS thing, Dr. Schmuckler, but I'm almost sure in reading through the policy manual that we already have a policy for protecting sensitive information. I mean, probably, yeah, so I'm just, the way that they describe it, oh, so this is very loud. Fresh battery? The way that they just, yeah, sorry? The way that they describe it in here, like we recommend that a formal policy be adopted is just a miss. I mean, it's really that it's
Determination. There is no teeth to the policy, which is what I alluded to. I can't.
Oh. You could use the mic too, I mean, from over there. Yeah.
That mic over, this one, well, this one works right now, so I feel like I was giving cheers. So I think when I looked at the policy, we have a policy that requires that because there's a whole series of
training you have to go through. And everything.
Right, well, not just that, but the policy has there's no failure to do so. There's no consequences in the policy.
Well,
And I
that's a
think
policy
that-
subcommittee thing, but.
Right, I think that is the issue. And then I also think we have mandatory cybersecurity training, except it's not mandatory because if you don't do it, nothing happens. So we did, I think, as one point mandate COVID vaccinations as proof of, or for required for continued employment, but I don't know that there's other aspects in there, and that might be the consequences bit that's missing.
Thank you.
Mine is dead too, yes.
This is on, right?
This is on, great. Donna.
I just want to make sure that we're also reading this report and not reacting defensively, because I think it's important to also read it with an open mind and consider the information that's in there without reacting to it in a way that's that might seem defensive. I'm not saying anyone here is being defensive. I'm just saying I think it's important that we're also reading it with an open mind.
Thank you. Anyone else? I think we may be down to 2 working mics. Okay. So moving on, we have school committee actions. We have 3 MOUs for voting with ASME, the ASME school building employees, the ASME food service employees, and the ASME Brookline Educational Secretaries Association employees. These are contracts that run from July 1st, 24 to June 30, 25, so we have a whopping 6 weeks remaining on these contracts. I would like to move, yeah, it's a 1-year COLA. I would like to move a favorable vote on 6A, B, and C.
Second.
Okay, Bob seconds. Any discussion? Go ahead, Dr. Given.
Yes, money's in the budget, and these are for the term of this fiscal year, July 1, 24 through June 30th of 25. And as Val said, these are cost of living increases for our building service employees, our BISA, our Brookline Educational Secretaries Association, and our school food service employees, each of those. And the union Local 1358 did vote to ratify this agreement on May 15th.
Thank you, and it's a 2% COLA. So I moved a favorable action. Was there a second? I'm sorry, somebody's like, Bob seconded. Jesse, how do you vote?
Michelle.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Mariah? Donna?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Bob? Andy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. This brings us to the exterior camera policy, which had a first reading at the policy subcommittee on May 1st. It is here before us for a second reading and possible vote. The one thing I want to say about this policy is that we did send it to town council, and there was a comment made back today that the footage would be considered a public record. So I would like to send it back to the policy subcommittee just to have some clarifying language and discussion around that issue. But BHS has asked that if we are so inclined, if we would have a contingent vote on this policy pending that discussion. We have one here.
Oh, yeah, that's
It is that one.
Thank you. Number one is I thought that at the last meeting here, we agreed that we needed to make one small change and then it was ready to go.
And
back-
town council, there were a couple of changes that were recommended. They were all minor, you're correct. But the other action that need to be taken was that need to be reviewed by town council. And town council has reviewed that in conjunction with the bylaw that we have on facial recognition. And as I mentioned, the one thing that came back today was a concern, or a wanting to let us know that the footage, like the body cam footage for the police department, would be subject to the public records law, and he wanted to make sure that that was known, and that if we wanted to have further discussion on that in terms of both how it would apply, how public records would apply, and any policy that we wanted to draft around that specific issue to add, that he'd be willing to come to the policy subcommittee meeting.
Okay, and then just to follow up, the sentence that we did, that I do remember that we talked about, which was the second one under storage and access, still to me seems a little odd. Video recordings will be stored for 90 days unless needed for investigations. I mean, the simple explanation to me is that video recordings will be stored for 90 days. I mean, if something's needed for investigations, how would we know? If it's a year later, I mean, if we're only storing it for 90 days, it won't be available. So obviously, if it's within the 90 days and someone needs it for investigations, we'll provide it.
I think that's what, I think it means that, maybe it's worth clarifying if there's a question about it, but I think my reading of it is that we would get rid of them after 90 days unless it was needed for furtherance of an active investigation that.
Right, yeah, but that, I mean, it goes without saying. I think it's in the language here, it's a little unclear. Because if we provide video to a legal firm or the police department for an event that happened on day 45 of our storing it, they're going to have the copy, they're going to have the data they need. We're not going to take it away from them if it takes them 6 months to investigate. Whereas the normal clock, as I understood it from our discussion last time, was that in general, we'll just be rolling it through a 90-day window. And it would have to, you know, the request would have to be made for information that's within the 90 days for it to be available. So this one, this unless needed by, to me, needs some wordsmithing.
We can, town council didn't have an issue with that, but we can run it by him again. Mariah.
I would like to understand, going back to town council, how this idea of the video being available through a records request intersects with FERPA and intersects with parent/caregiver right to have their children opt out of being photographed or videoed and having that released publicly. Because when we sign up for PSB, we specifically opt in or out to any sort of photographs or videos of our children being used publicly. And for those adults who have not allowed that, the idea that there could be a public records request that could include your child might be quite disturbing to people that could be filed. So I would like to understand, for example, would a public records request then, I don't know, of saying, oh, the video outside the school from whatever hour to whatever hour, would there be the opportunity to then exclude the children who don't have that, and how FERPA intersects with that? So that's just a bigger question that town council's point is bringing up for me. And why I wouldn't feel comfortable right now agreeing to vote it contingently, because I would want to have a lot of clarity on that.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, so I would recommend then that we send this to policy for further discussion of that issue. Any disagreements? Okay, this will go to the soon-to-be reorganized policy subcommittee. We are back to public comment. I believe that we are back to public comment, yes. We're finishing up public comment now. So we have, Betsy, tell me if anybody has removed themselves from this. We have Arit Moore, I believe, is the next person on our list. Okay. And then Summer Thurston is after.
Reed, are you online?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, now let's try with the camera on. Okay, can you see me now?
We can. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here in this forum. My name is Irit Moore, and I'm a proud parent of a first grader at Ridley. I'm here to talk about the proposed reduction of the second grade classes at the school and why preserving it all 5 sections is so important for our kids and our community. When we moved to Brookline, it was because we believed in the value this town places on education. We chose Ridley not just for its reputation, but for its warmth, for the community we hope to become a part of. And that hope was fulfilled. Tonight, I'm here to speak from the heart, not about numbers or projections, and certainly not about calculations that don't fully reflect the students who will walk through the doors this fall. Many of these concerns have already been laid out clearly in the thoughtful letters and emails you've received from our incredible community. Instead, I want to speak to what a small class sizes make possible. They make it possible for a child to be truly seen, to have a teacher notice when they're struggling, to find the courage to speak up, ask a question, or share an idea. My daughter is in the ELE program. She started last year, unsure of her English, unsure of herself, to be honest. But because her classroom wasn't too big, and because her teachers had the time and space to see her, she found her voice. And it's not just the children who benefit. Teachers in small classrooms can teach, connect, support. They can build relationships with every student and tailor their instruction to the needs in the room. We have wonderful educators in second grade today, and great teachers are not easy to find. When we have them, we should do everything we can to hold on to them and give them the conditions they need to succeed. I know the district is facing hard decisions, but I truly believe this is the wrong place to make a cut. Second grade is a pivotal year. Our children are growing as readers, thinkers, and compassionate individuals. They need calm, not chaos, support, not strain. This is not just staffing choice, it's a statement about what kind of classrooms we want for our children. Please choose to protect the learning environment that helps kids thrive. And please keep 5 second grade classes at Ridley. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Summer Thurston, followed by Abigail Braca. Summer, if you're there, you can turn your camera on and speak when you're ready.
Hi, thank you. Start my timer for my 3 minutes. I know it's been a long night. I'm also here to speak like Irit was and like Kevin was earlier about the 5 sections at FRR. Unfortunately, my son last year as a kindergartner lost his teacher, a 14-year tenured teacher, which the class actually never even had a chance to say goodbye. And I see from May 23rd last year was the night that I was sending an email to Superintendent Gilroy and our entire class regarding the fact that we lost our kindergarten teacher and then had a paraprofessional for the remainder of the year. That was last year. This year, the same thing happened, as Mr. Walton spoke about. Miss Judd, who had been a 10-year tenured teacher, also was left. She left in January, and we now have a paraprofessional for the balance of the year. So that by the time my son and other students are in second grade, they will have had a quote, whatever we see on the website, a K-2 teacher for 9 months out of 18 months and a paraprofessional for 9 months. And I had gone to the website last year to look at the requirements, 2 of the bullet points on a paraprofessional, and they are wonderful. I am so thankful that we've had them. It says previous experience working with children is preferred but not required. And the second bullet point was a college degree is preferred but is not required. So I, as a parent, know that my son, who has now been here for 2 years, has really only had a teacher, and I know we have high standards on our teachers, for 1 year. And if he's moving into the same type of environment in second grade, where we also have higher numbers and we have more burnout, and we're going to end up with a paraprofessional again, that's just, I think that any parent would not want that to happen and would be concerned that their child is falling behind and that they're not getting this high quality of education that Brookline is known for and that can provide. So again, it was May 23rd last year we were dealing with this, May 22nd this year, and I'm just hoping that next year things stabilize a bit. I know it's tough in a lot of classrooms and a lot of the schools, and the parents are here to support and to help, but we also need that support as well. So please reconsider reducing from 5 sections to 4. There are children that have, as I mentioned, my child and others, they haven't even had a teacher for 50% of their experience thus far at public schools in Brookline. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Abigail, followed by Elise Couture. Abigail, if you're on. Okay. Elise, okay. And then do we have Shayna? Oh, Ben is here for Shayna. Are you Ben, sir? You're not Ben, okay. Okay. Decline to enter. And we don't have Ben? Okay. That concludes public comment for the evening. Moving on to new business. Is there any new business? Mariah? Can you, it's a few hours ago, can you remind me of the new, was it the updates on deputy?
Updates on the 2 deputy searches / filling.
Okay, I don't have one, but sure.
So the question was the update on the interim deputy for OTL. That position has been posted, and I understand that there are a few applicants there. I don't have that number in front of me now, but I do know that they're last Friday.
Okay, I was going to say, I looked last week.
Yeah, last Friday. Except now, Dr. Bob and I actually talked about it a little earlier today, so I went to the website and saw it for myself, so it's there. And I believe the closing, I think it was open for 2 or 3 weeks, but I don't remember the specific closing on it, so. The posting for the OTL, the interim deputy superintendent of the Office of Teaching and Learning.
So you don't leave it open until
Let's, just for, yeah.
I don't, Dr. Schmuckler is still here. We have a few more weeks, I think, so we'll see about posting that. I don't believe it's posted at the moment. Is that right, Dr. Guillory?
I guess my question is, sorry. Oh, thank you. I guess my question, is, there's probably some uncertainty out there in the community about where OSS is going to be in 5 weeks. So, I mean, I know that 4 or 5 weeks, Dr. Schmuckler is here, but there's maybe some uncertainty about what's going to happen after June 30th.
Yes.
Which is why I've been asking, on behalf of CPAC and others, what is our current recruitment if Dr. Schmuckler were to finish out her contract with us and then not be here, and how would we ever transfer everything that, the golden information that Dr. Schmuckler has collected in 3 months and a half or so to that other person if we run to the, to the finish line and we don't have something happen yet? We haven't heard anything, and so that was my question.
If that horrible event were to occur, which I'm hoping it doesn't, we would post that and then perhaps ask Dr. Schmuckler to come on a consulting basis to provide that information to a new person is my best guess. We have 3 interims that we're working on right now, so, and Dr. Schmuckler, are you? This is it, Karen, this is.
No, say
I had agreed just to your question, and it's a problem I have, but lucky for you, to stay at least through the end of the summer, because I do want to, I had hoped to put a lot of the more kind of process and procedures in place by the end of June, and that's certainly hasn't been possible. So I have committed to stay until the end of the summer so that I can do that work at least, and so that anyone moving in will have, just a complete drive and will at least have everything documented, and certainly would do a passover.
Thank you for that, Dr.
If
Schmuckler.
that's the outcome. So, it's still short time. It is short time, but I would also be concerned just in terms of June. Yeah, June's around the corner. So, okay.
Thank you. Any other new business? Carolyn? Where's the, there we go.
That'll work. Thank you, Betsy. I got this.
Donna and then you.
So I think I just want to put out a sort of generalized request, and it's not fully formed in my mind, but I guess I'll say what I'm feeling. So we're hearing from FRR parents. We heard from Driscoll parents. We've had this conversation before about class sizes. We know things are in flux. We heard last week from Driscoll parents about a VP decision that I think a lot of us didn't know about. So I guess I just want to sort of put out there, as this new cycle of school committee starts, like a request for some kind of structured, more communication flow, information flow to school committee, even if it is, we're not sure yet. Like, we're hearing concerns about FRR, this is what it looks like. Having really updated enrollment at some point, that nice table that was created should be updated and some corrections made. So it feels to me when I hear these concerns and hear sort of high-level staff decisions that are made that the community knows about and we don't even know about, not only because it's difficult then to respond, but I really want to know, and I guess I really want to know whether that's something I want to be elevating through whatever channels I might be able to elevate it through us, through staff. So I don't even know. Yeah, so I just want to keep sort of saying that I would, like, one of the great things Susan has done is the position control report. So something along those lines that's a sort of status update. Here's how we're looking at this school, this school, this school. Because it just doesn't, I feel as sort of desperately uninformed, I think sometimes as many of the parents that we hear from. And I think that they're valid things that I think we should know about. So that's just kind of putting that out there to chew on.
Just to refresh my memory, is the OSS deputy position posted?
It's not.
Okay, so should it be posted?
What Val is working on.
Wait, Val's working on the deputy OSS position?
I guess I'll pick that up in this interim period. I'll probably pick that up and work with Alvin on getting it posted.
Reposted.
Reposted.
Thank you.
We have now a little bit of time. Not a lot of time, but a little bit of time.
Well, I guess.
Not a lot of time.
Yeah, okay.
Donna and then Bob.
Thanks. I think this is somewhat related to what Carolyn was asking. Please restructure my question using your veteran school committee minds. Is it possible to docket a discussion of how the decision was made around the Driscoll VP and around the second grade sectioning.
Yes, we can ask Dr. Givens to update that with her next budget update.
Thank you.
Are we done? It was Bob and then Jesse. Just make sure we don't veer into deliberation, folks. Just new business.
All right, it's working. So I clearly remember back in the day when we analyzed the schedule and enrollments in July, early August, and if we needed an additional section, I would go to Peter Rowe and advocate for another section. So my question is, do we have that kind of flexibility, that kind of fund to deal with unanticipated growth?
Mariah might know the number, but it's 3. We started off the budget season with 8, I think. I think it started at 8, then it was down to 5, and now we're down
We
to.
started at 8.5 FTEs that were, well, the equivalent of, the dollar equivalent of 8.5 FTEs that were held in reserve. Then it chipped away by 1, then it chipped away by another 2.5, I believe. So we were down to 5. I think tentatively, there was 2 or 3 that you all were holding. No, but that was 2.5, but we had an earlier one of 1. So it was 1 and then 2.5. Yeah. So, okay, so it was 1 and then 2.5, so it went down to 5. But there was a couple we had discussed a couple weeks ago, and I can't remember where they were. And anyway, it is an interest. It would be helpful, I think, to get an update on. It looks like Dr. Schmuckler has an update too. And I think there was also some para placements that also have, but those aren't. The FTEs were counted as Unit A FTEs. I don't know where the mic is right now. Oh, but Al has it. And then, so it's really the dollar amount that then gets eaten away by either paras or other positions. But Dr.
I just wanted to give you an update just because I know Susan's been working on it and has asked principals for enrollment and registration. So I know it's one of the priorities when she gets back next week to really look at sections. And we do, to your, as you heard, there are reserve sections. So to really look at where numbers are at all the kind of pressure points. So that's work, including the para pieces, is work that Susan has a series of meetings scheduled all of next week from Tuesday on with principals and directors to really look at, to try really get at this really question. Do we need to move reserve sections? What are numbers looking like? I think people are projecting a real drop in international enrollment this summer. And so that often pushes, as you all know, we get these real waves of enrollment in the summer, which drives our number up, and people are not expecting that given just what's going on politically. So trying to kind of gauge all of that, but that work is happening next week.
So can I follow up?
So thank you. To follow up on some of the questions we had about the VP thing, I would like to just suggest, if possible, that our school committee made decisions about changes that would happen in the district. And yet, as the changes are being implemented, we're sometimes the last to find out about it. It's an avalanche of emails that comes in from angry parents. I wonder if we might consider changing our process just a little bit so that when decisions are made, the school committee gets an email quickly to say, hey, we're just letting you know that we've identified a section change, or we want to let you know just internally, keep it, within the school committee at least, that the that a vice principal, that you voted to do something, and this is what's happening. I think if the school committee was ahead of some of these critical changes that impact the community, it would be an improvement in transparency, and it also puts us in this. I don't want to say we don't trust the school committee, but there are a lot of comments out there about people looking at sort of what's happened and say it's the school committee didn't know, the school committee knew and didn't do, and stuff like that. I think if we had information a little sooner, we could get ahead of some of the publicity. And it certainly would put us in a more trusted position than we are now, which is to sort of be at the end of the communication chain.
Any other new topics? We have Mr. Rosenblit is now online for our last public comment before adjournment. Whenever you're ready. Okay. Mr. Rosenblit, you can speak when you're ready and turn your camera on if you'd like.
No problem. Are you able to hear me?
We are, thank you.
Excellent. So thank you. I'm here as a parent of a first grade student at FRR who has special learning needs. I respectfully urge you guys to reject the proposal to eliminate the second grade classroom or the elimination of the second grade classroom for next year. This decision would have far-reaching negative consequences beyond just Avi and his classmates, particularly those with disabilities, learning differences, and sensory impairments by increasing class sizes beyond what is developmentally and neurologically appropriate. The projected class size of 22 students exceeds that of other classrooms across Brookline. Estimate doesn't account for enrollment increases throughout the year, which we know, looking historically, have always come through. Our son was placed at FRR by the district rather than at our neighborhood school because he is hearing impaired and his condition impacts speech differentiation, sound localization, and causes auditory fatigue, challenges that again would be exacerbated by increased classroom size. So more noise, fewer opportunities for personalized support. The research is unequivocal. Smaller class sizes lead to better academic outcomes, especially for younger students and for those with special educational needs. So more than happy to provide studies like the STAR project, Beth and Hordsby from 2014, and Blanchford from 2003, looking at students like Avi who rely on environmental supports and teacher attention to succeed. Increased class size can cause setbacks. Clearly, the research has shown that a cognitive load and fatigue in noisy settings impair the ability for people to retain and process information. So it's not a matter of convenience. It's really a question of equitable learning for Avi and for his classmates. This shows that as class size increases, the likelihood of disruptive behavior is also going to increase, particularly among students with attention or sensory processing disorders. This triggers the need for paraeducators or extended IEP services, offsetting the financial benefit that the district is going to hope to gain from consolidating the classroom. So it's not equitable for the district to recommend FRR for students with learning and sensory differences and then take steps that will make it harder for them to learn once placed there. Avi and his classmates deserve to learn in an environment that supports and not compromises their growth and success. And the research is clear, and so is a moral imperative. So please vote against the classroom reduction and stand up in support of small classroom sizes and allow all students, including Avi, to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenblit. That is the last item on our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second. All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right. Have a great evening, everybody.
You didn't allow us to say no because we're having so much fun.